In the strange biology of goblins, potential was etched into the father's bloodline, while limitation lay dormant in the mother's body. A goblin born from a groundhog might never rise above mediocrity. But should its mother be a dragon, even a goblin could be born with terrifying power, inheriting draconic traits and the chance, however slim, to one day evolve into a goblin king. Such a hybrid would possess astonishing base attributes and even awaken powerful innate skills. Of course, such a creature was almost a myth. Dragons ruled the skies and goblins scraped the dirt. The two species lived in entirely different realms, goblins barely managing to survive in a forest where they were just another prey animal in the food chain. Dragons were apex predators, born with dominion in their bones. There was no intersection, no future in which a dragon and a goblin could truly coexist. Inside the chieftain's hut, Li Meng cast a sidelong glance at Bai Ling, the pale-scaled high priestess of the white-scale tribe. She sat silently, face unreadable, refusing his attempts at conversation. Li Meng grinned to himself and stood, stretching with casual disregard. He didn't particularly care whether she warmed up to him or not. In time, she would bear his offspring. That was enough. "Boss! Boss!" A voice called from outside, rousing Gobu Chong, who had been loitering near the entrance like a loyal dog hoping for scraps. Li Meng stepped out into the morning light, bare-chested and gleaming with the strength of his recent evolution. He squinted toward the clear sky. "What is it now?" he asked lazily. Gobu Chong glanced past him toward the interior of the hut, eyes gleaming with desire. "Boss, can I have a female?" The temperature dropped. Li Meng's smile vanished as he stared, emotionless. "You're the first goblin to ever ask me for mating rights," he said coldly. The word struck like a hammer. Gobu Chong fell to his knees with a panicked gasp, banging his head against the dirt. "Forgive me. I was wrong, boss. I won't do it again." Li Meng waved him off with mild disgust. Then scram. Chong didn't need to be told twice. Nearby goblins who'd been watching snickered behind clawed hands. "That old fool hangs around the boss too much," one muttered. "Gobuda, you should challenge him." "Challenge? I left his hunting party long ago. If I'm challenging anyone, it's the little boss." Chong heard every word. His eyes narrowed as he stalked away, fists clenched and rage simmering just below the surface. "Just wait," he vowed. "Once I evolve, I'll silence you all." But fate had something else in store for him. A scout came sprinting in from the northwest. "Lizardmen, a group is approaching from the swamp." Chong's eyes lit up. "An opportunity. I'll handle this," he said and darted back toward the boss. "Boss! Boss!" He skidded to a kneel before Li Meng once more. "The tribute has arrived." Li Meng raised an eyebrow, tempted to inspect it himself. But then he reconsidered. "Let them in. Bring a few leaders to me." Chong's chest swelled with pride. The boss still trusted him. He bowed deeply and dashed off, a new spring in his step. In the swamp. The swamp to the northwest teemed with movement. For the 500 lizard men advanced slowly through shallow waters, eyes full of uncertainty and dread. Their leaders, Grayscale and Blackscale, walked side by side, helping their wives through the murky terrain. Ahead loomed the towering wooden palisades of the Goblin fortress. "No turning back now. This had better work," Blackscale muttered. "You're sure the white scales haven't betrayed us?" Grayscale's face was grim. "I've sent messengers to the Black Mountain tribe. With Bai Ling's bloodline on the line, they'll send reinforcements. When they come, so will our revenge." Blackscale said nothing, glancing at his anxious wife. There was little comfort to offer. It was either bend the knee or become food. Half an hour later, the Lizardmen delegation arrived outside the northern gate. As they were ushered inside, hundreds of goblin eyes followed them. Some goblins licked their lips. Others simply stared with open greed. The Lizardmen shivered under the gazes, unsure if this tribute delivery was a diplomatic gesture or the first step into a trap. "Those weapons," Blackscale whispered. "Some of these goblins are armed with iron bows." Grayscale narrowed his eyes. "They don't look like human-made bows, but they're definitely not wooden. That metal, it's iron. Where did they get iron weapons?" Blackscale muttered. How could goblins? We'll find out, Grayscale replied, though his voice was uncertain. At the edge of the village, Gobu Chang appeared, gesturing for the leaders to follow. He didn't speak their language, but body language was enough. The lizard men followed him through the heart of the goblin village, past watchful gazes and newly built huts. Eventually, they reached the chieftain's hut, larger, sturdier, and clearly central. Li Ming sat in front, lounging like a jungle king, while Bin napped nearby like a living siege engine. At the doorway stood Bai Ling, her expression unreadable as her people approached. Bai Ling, the lizard men gasped. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Their high priestess, reduced to a prisoner? She didn't speak. Her gaze remained fixed ahead, unflinching. The procession stopped roughly 20 meters from the hut. Chang scurried forward, beaming with pride. Boss, I brought them. Li Ming nodded slightly, eyes sweeping the crowd. His gaze locked onto two lizard men with particularly high auras. Level 47. They stood straighter than the rest. Warriors. Leaders. Perfect, he thought. These two will be useful. A new game was about to begin, and Li Ming was holding all the pieces. At the entrance of the great wooden lodge, Li Ming sat like a king upon his throne. Wei pointed at himself, both Grayscale and Blackscale, leaders of their respective tribes, exchanged glances before turning toward Bai Ling, their former high priestess. Meeting their questioning gaze, Bai Ling gave a small, deliberate nod. Understanding her signal, the two lizard men walked forward with heavy steps and quiet dignity, their pride buried beneath the weight of survival. Bai Ling, Li Ming murmured, glancing her way without looking up. Who are those two? At his side, Gobu Gu had been squinting curiously at the approaching pair. His question broke the silence. With a faint frown, Bai Ling replied quietly, they're the tribal leaders of the Grayscale and Blackscale tribes. Elders and their mates. A flicker of intrigue sparked in Li Ming's eyes. Tribal leaders offering themselves as tribute, he said, lips curling in amusement. Either they're braver than I thought, or this is their last move before extinction. He wasn't wrong. For two proud tribes to kneel before goblins, to surrender their dignity and leadership, it was not submission born of cowardice, but desperation. Their sacrifice was a calculated act of preservation. When Grayscale and Blackscale reached him, they knelt without hesitation, foreheads touching the earth, humbled by necessity. Li Ming looked down at them, pleased. He could feel the simmering defiance beneath the surface, but it didn't matter. He had time. Bai Ling, he said lazily, tell them this. Starting now, the male lizard men fall under their command. The females under yours. We move at first light. Bai Ling relayed his words in the lizardmen tongue. The two elders looked up at her, then nodded silently. Li Ming could understand every word through the heart speech skill, though he acted as though he couldn't. No reason to reveal all his cards just yet. After the message was conveyed, the tribal leaders rose and departed quietly. The gathered lizard men were gradually led away to be settled across the goblin settlement. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, the swamp shimmered under the fading light. That evening, the White Scale tribe's settlement buzzed with activity. Hunting parties returned with spoils, swamp crabs, crocodile carcasses, and other wild game. The air smelled of smoke and cooked meat. Under the soft veil of moonlight, in one of the huts, a quiet meeting took place. A dozen lizard men whispered among themselves, their voices heavy with unease. These goblins, they're not like the others, one murmured. They're too organized. I thought we'd be degraded immediately. But they held back. They looked at us like prey, but they didn't pounce. Something's different. All eyes turned to each other. Caution was paramount. They're evolving, one said finally. Or maybe it's that one, the leader. Before doubt could fester, Grayscale spoke calmly. Enough. This isn't the time to provoke them. For now, we observe. Stay quiet. Do not make waves. Reluctantly, the gathering dispersed into the shadows. The march. Dawn broke with the screeching of swamp birds and the shuffle of bare goblin feet. Doors burst open. Goblins shoved their way into huts, shouting and waving crude weapons. Lizard men were yanked from sleep and driven outside into the misty morning. A massive procession began to form at the west gate, a caravan of goblins and lizard men moving into the wilderness. They hunted along the way, the goblins expertly coordinating their movement, pushing through the swamp and into the forest beyond. By the 5th day, they arrived. Nestled deep in the woods was the true heart of the Goblin Empire. Crude wooden homes scattered across clearings, smoke curling from chimneys. It was smaller than expected, but brimming with tension and life. "Is this the Goblin's base?" Grayscale whispered. Beside him, Blackscale frowned. "Too small for 1,000. Could this be all of them?" They stood in awe as hundreds of goblins assembled in the clearing, filling the forest with murmurs and rustling. Weapons glinted in the sun, and the atmosphere grew heavy with unspoken intent. At the center of it all, Li Meng stood atop the wooden steps of his hut. Dozens of big goblins stood at attention behind him. Many of them had only recently evolved, their muscles rippling, their forms imposing. A few had grown so large they were on the verge of evolving into goblin warriors. Then came Gobu, sprinting breathlessly from the forest, joining the ranks like a loyal hound returning to his master. Li Meng's gaze shifted to Bai Ling. "Separate them," he said calmly. "Females to the right, males to the left." Bai Ling stepped forward. Speaking in the lizardman's tongue, she issued the command loudly. Uncertainty spread through the crowd. Whispers, whimpers. Some females clung desperately to their mates. Li Meng's patience thinned. He gave a silent signal. With wicked grins, the goblins raised their spears and descended. "Separate, male left, female right." The goblins jabbed at the lizard men, shouting and corralling them like livestock. The message was clear, even without words. Reluctantly, the lizard men obeyed. The two groups were split. Li Meng turned to Gobu. "The males are yours. Put them to work. And don't eat them." Gobu nodded eagerly, though his eyes drifted hungrily toward the female lizard men. "Boss, later." The promise was enough. Gobu grinned and led the males into the woods, their nervous glances trailing behind them as they disappeared. Li Meng turned his attention to the women. "These," Bai Ling said, "are the mates of the elder leaders. They belong to you now." 13 female lizard men stood behind her. Li Meng's eyes gleamed with hunger, not for flesh, but for power. In time, he thought, my bloodline will run through this swamp. He nodded, satisfied. "Take them inside." Bai Ling nodded and turned. The females followed, silent and expressionless. As the last one crossed the threshold of the hut, Li Meng stood tall beneath the midday sun. The tribe was his, and his legacy had just begun.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Although Li Meng couldn't tell whether the lizard men were attractive or not, the elder's companions were all quite voluptuous. They differed slightly from other ordinary female lizard men, at least in terms of their fuller and more graceful curves. Their levels were also significantly higher. Ordinary female lizard men were around level 20, while the elder's companions were all above level 30. "Bai Ling, you should call me master." As he walked past Li Meng, he coldly said this. Bai Ling trembled and lowered her head slightly. "Master." This call of master made Li Meng grin, and he reached out to give Bai Ling's plump rear a slap. With a face full of embarrassment and anger, Bai Ling led her people into the house. Bai Ling did not enter the house, but stood behind Li Meng. "Gobu, you performed bravely this time. I'll reward you with 10 female lizard men. Remember, they're not food. Before the rotation period ends, you must return them to me intact. If any are missing, you owe me an explanation, and I'll punish you based on that explanation." Gobu nodded vigorously, dropping to his knees with a fawning expression. "Boss, I won't eat them, I swear." Li Meng waved his hand, his gaze sweeping over the female lizard men. "Go pick 10 female lizard men." Gobu quickly got up and happily ran towards the female lizard men. You. In no time, Gobuchang had selected 10 female lizard men and cheerfully led them to his wooden house. The other big goblins looked on enviously as Gobuchang left with the 10 female lizard men. Gobu-ta, Gobu-ku, Gobu-chi, Gobu-liang, you all performed well in this battle. Each of you will receive 5 female lizard men. The 4 big goblins ran towards the female lizard men at the call. Looking at the group of female lizard men, the big goblins showed greedy expressions, while the female lizard men trembled in fear. Gobuda, Gobubu, Gobugu, each of you pick 3 females. 2 of the 3 big goblins ran greedily towards the female lizard men. Only Gobugu did not move. I'm not satisfied, Gobameng. I challenge you. Gobugu looked greedily at Bai Ling behind Li Meng. He fearlessly stared directly at Li Meng, provocatively pointing at him with his right hand. Gobu Ji's challenge to the boss startled the surrounding goblins, but it was soon followed by excited cheers. Gobugu, Gobugu. All the goblins in the forest shouted loudly, cheering for Gobugu. The law of the jungle has always been the truth goblins adhere to for thousands of years. Challenging the boss is an honor worthy of respect among goblins. Even Gobuchang, who had walked far away, ran back, shouting Gobugu to cheer him on. The cheers and support from his companions made Gobu Ji's face light up with excitement. Ah! He roared to the sky. An astonishing scene unfolded as Gobugu began to evolve. His body crackled and expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Originally nearly 1.8 meters tall, he instantly grew to 2 meters. His body also appeared more robust and towering. Gobugu, Gobugu. This scene sent the goblins into a frenzy, roaring and shouting with all their might. Gobameng, I am the boss now. The powerful force surging from within Gobu made him roar. His strong, muscular body charged towards Li Meng with a roar. And at this scene, Bai Ling, standing behind Li Meng, had a face full of schadenfreude. Goblin challenges shouldn't involve magic, right? If magic couldn't be used, as just a big goblin, he was doomed. Binbin, don't intervene. Binbin, standing nearby, grabbed the spike club at his side. If he swung it, even 10 Gobugu wouldn't be enough. Watching Gobugu charge, Li Meng's eyes narrowed slightly. In the future predicted by the simulated life, Gobugu had also challenged him. Li Meng thought the future had changed, but now it seemed not. His future had changed, but Gobugu, evolving into a goblin solitaire to challenge him, had not. Gobameng Dai, Gobu Ji's strong body, like a heavy tank, closed in on Li Meng. A massive fist swung towards Li Meng's head. Seeing the boss so close, Gobu Ji's face showed excitement. As long as he killed the boss, he would become the boss. Then, he would have everything the boss had. Just as the fist was about to hit Li Meng's face, Li Meng moved. His left hand suddenly swung up, striking Gobu Ji's arm with lightning speed. The immense force directly deflected Gobu Ji's fist. This strike left Gobu Ji's front wide open. Li Meng's right hand turned into a palm, stepping forward, and struck Gobu Ji's chest with a palm. Defense and attack. The 2 moves were executed by Li Meng with seamless fluidity. Boom! With a boom, a wave of air exploded. Gobu Ji's massive body flew out like a cannonball, soaring tens of meters away, and slammed into a large tree with a boom. Crack! A large dent appeared in the tree trunk, and Gobugu, who had been struck, was like a watermelon smashed by a giant hammer, shattered into pieces. In an instant, blood and flesh flew everywhere, staining that space red. This terrifying scene abruptly silenced the goblins' cheers. All the goblins looked at the boss at the wooden house door with faces full of fear. Bai Ling, standing behind Li Meng, was even paler. Only she could sense the immense power contained within the small body of the goblin in front of her, unable to believe how a big goblin could possess such terrifying strength. Standing at the wooden house door, Li Meng coldly surveyed his goblin underlings. The goblins, swept over by Li Meng's gaze, all lowered their heads in reverence. The remaining big goblins each picked 3 female lizard men. The boss's sudden voice startled the big goblins, and over a dozen big goblins instinctively knelt. Upon hearing the boss's words, they quickly got up and excitedly ran towards the female lizardmen. After all the big goblins had chosen their mates, there were still over 100 female lizardmen left. Many ordinary goblins were about to evolve into big goblins, so some female lizardmen needed to be reserved for them. Bai Ling arranged for the remaining ones to take care of the pregnant female lizardmen. Hearing this, Bai Ling silently walked towards her people. Everything the goblins did behind her left Bai Ling in shock and fear. He was too clever, making it hard to believe he was a goblin. Rationally distributing the female tribesmen was not something a goblin would do. Soon, the goblins gathered in front of the wooden house dispersed. Before dark, Gobu Gu returned to the tribe. Bin, is the boss inside? Gobu Gu looked enviously at the tightly closed door. He heard the soft noises coming from inside. Clearly, the boss was in there. Bin, who had been snoring away, sat up. It looked down at the little Gobu Gu. Then it lay back down and resumed its snoring. Gobu Gu gave an awkward smile and patiently waited. Meanwhile, inside the hut, Li Ming was venting his energy on a female lizard man. The other female lizard men were huddled fearfully in the corner. Among all the female lizard men, only Bai Ling remained calm. She sat by the door, hugging her knees, pretending to sleep with her eyes closed. She seemed indifferent to the enticing view beneath her beast skirt. The female lizard man beneath Li Ming suddenly let out a sharp scream. Her strong hands wrapped tightly around Li Ming's chest and waist. Even with a lizard head, the desire in her eyes was evident. Seeing the alluring expression on the female lizardman's face, Li Ming smiled secretly. To increase the chances of conception, the goblin's thing had an aphrodisiac effect. No matter how much Bai Ling hated him, once in the state, she would fall into a pit of desire. At that point, Bai Ling wouldn't just resist, she might even take the lead. It was precisely because of this ability that creatures mated by goblins often went insane. The intertwining of pleasure and disgust day after day could easily lead to a mental breakdown. No one knew how long it took before the sounds inside the hut finally quieted down. Inside, Li Ming climbed off the female lizard man. Standing up, Li Ming opened a window on one side. With the window open, the room became much brighter. Bai Ling, why don't they escape? Li Ming had always wondered about the Black Scale tribe's submission. The swamp was so vast that if the Black Scale tribe chose to flee, Li Ming wouldn't bother chase them. Not just the Black Scale tribe. Even if the Gray Scale tribe abandoned their fortress and fled, Li Ming wouldn't pursue them. Because the swamp was the lizardmen's home ground. Lizardmen moved much faster in the swamp than goblins. Even if he wanted to chase them, he couldn't catch up. Bai Ling, sitting by the door, opened her eyes, revealing pale golden pupils. She looked up at her master, standing naked by the window. Master, we swamp lizardmen love humid environments and can't live without water. If our bodies don't get moisture for a long time, our skin will crack and our scales will shatter. In the Goblin Forest, there are only two places suitable for swamp lizardmen to live. One is the Black Mountain Swamp, and the other is the Northern Swamp where we are. Our roots are here. Once we leave the Northern Swamp, we cannot survive. Why not choose to return to the Black Mountain Swamp? Standing by the window, Li Ming turned to look at Bai Ling sitting by the door. His gaze slightly lowered, revealing the private parts beneath Bai Ling's beast skirt. Seemingly aware of where her master's gaze was, Bai Ling slightly turned and lowered her legs. In the wooden hut, Bai Ling's voice rang out again. The Black Mountain Swamp is deep within the Goblin Forest, very far from the Northern Swamp. If we migrate with the entire tribe, the risk is too great. Besides the young and strong, most women and children would likely die on the way. Although we are good with water, we can't catch agile fish in deep water, and we are not agile enough on land to catch weak magical beasts and animals. Bai Ling's words made Li Ming suddenly understand. No wonder the Black Scale tribe prefer to submit to him rather than migrate with the entire tribe. Thinking about it carefully, one could understand the Black Scale tribe's choice. Catching magical beasts was not an easy task. Low-level magical beasts were not much different from ordinary animals. Even when faced with weaker opponents, they would choose to run away first. And the magical beasts that didn't run often possessed great strength. Swamp lizardmen were not agile on land, and their success rate in hunting low-level magical beasts was very low. Swamp lizardmen, unlike goblins, didn't have powerful claws. Even without tools, goblins could dig out groundhogs hidden in burrows. Goblins were also small enough to crawl into groundhog holes and drive them out. Moreover, goblins had the ability to see at night. This made goblins very successful hunters. But swamp lizard men had no advantage in hunting. In terms of survival ability in the forest, goblins far surpassed swamp lizard men. Without enough food on the migration route, it would be a disaster. Turning away from the window, Li Ming walked towards the door. With a creak, the door that had been closed for several hours opened again. Boss, boss! The sound of the door opening startled Gobu Gu, who was dozing off by the door. It jumped up in surprise and quickly turned to look at the door. In Gobu Ji's eyes, the boss walked out of the hut. Gobu Gu hurriedly went up with a fawning expression. Li Ming, stepping out of the hut, stretched lazily. Bai Ling, take Gobu Gu to select 5 female lizard men. Hearing the boss's words, Gobu Ji's face lit up with joy. Bai Ling, now dressed in her beast skirt, walked out of the hut. She glared at Gobu Gu with disgust. Then she headed towards the direction where the female lizard men were housed. Gobu Gu, hand over half of the male lizard men to Gobu Chong. Go! Gobu Gu quickly nodded and chased after Bai Ling. Watching the backs of Gobu Gu and Bai Ling as they left, Li Ming glanced around the tribe. The tribe was still too small, and the wooden huts were neither enough nor big enough. The buildings of the white-scale tribe and the gray-scale tribe were well constructed. It was just right to have the lizard men expand the tribe, to build more and larger wooden huts. You go find Gobu Chong and have him come see me. The big goblins should all be in the tribe now, making babies. Li Ming said to a goblin standing guard at the door. The hunting party of the tribe wouldn't all be sent out to hunt. 2 hunting parties would be left to protect the tribe's safety. Besides some patrols, some important places would also have goblins standing guard. Yes, boss. The goblin on guard quickly ran towards the direction of Gobu Chong's hut. About 10 minutes later, Gobu Chong arrived at the hut before Bai Ling. Boss, you called me. Gobu Chong came running over, panting slightly. Looking at the somewhat breathless Gobu Chong in front of him, Li Ming glanced slightly towards the depths of the forest. In that direction, Bai Ling was walking over. Soon, Gobu Gu will assign you some male lizard men. You don't need to go out hunting anymore. Your next task is to lead the male lizard men to expand the tribe and build more and larger wooden huts. Do you understand? Expand the tribe? Gobu Chong's eyes lit up, and he quickly nodded. Boss, leave it to me. Its wooden hut was really too small. A big wooden hut would provide a more comfortable space. Gobu Chong felt excited. Soon, it would have a big wooden hut. Go! Gobu Chong turned and ran towards the depths of the forest. As Gobu Chong left, Bai Ling also returned to Li Ming's side. Boss, I know what to do. Once the piglets are weaned, I'll make sure each of the brothers has one to raise. With a grin, Li Ming turned around and untied the wild boar's saddle from a boar. After removing the saddle, Li Ming patted the sturdy body of the boar. This boar has good genes. Let's use it for breeding. And so, Li Ming's goblin army gained a new unit of wild boar cavalry. However, training wild boar cavalry isn't something that can be accomplished quickly. The gestation period for wild boars is over 2 months. It takes another 3 months for the piglets to mature. In other words, it will be 6 months before the first batch of piglets can become mounts. Watching the boss's departing figure, Gobu Chong was full of admiration. The boss is really smart, not like a goblin at all. Back at the wooden cabin, Li Ming sat down at the entrance. Looking at Binbin, who was snoring away nearby, Li Ming smiled faintly. Binbin was almost becoming his guardian deity. Li Ming slightly raised his head and looked at the dense canopy. Goblins don't like staying under the sun for long periods. Therefore, the tribe's construction didn't involve cutting down trees. The wooden cabins were built using trees as the supporting structure. I wonder when the black robe will come. Li Ming thought of the black robe that appeared in the future predicted by the simulated life. And what exactly is the sacrificial disc that can summon the barbarian god? But what is the barbarian god? A deity of this world? Bai Ling, what is the barbarian god? The door behind him was open. Bai Ling was sitting in the corner behind the door. Although he couldn't see her, Li Ming knew Bai Ling was there. Every race has a deity they worship. The deity worshipped by the barbarians is called the barbarian god. Could it be that deities really exist in this world? Why don't goblins have a barbarian god to worship? During his time in the goblin lair, Li Ming had never heard of anything like a barbarian god. Goblins are an ignorant and savage race. Their ugly nature makes them think of nothing but eating and mating. Bai Ling's disdain for goblins was undisguised. Sitting at the door, Li Ming grinned and didn't take it to heart. As Bai Ling said, goblins are indeed savage and ignorant. Anything beyond eating and mating is superfluous. The reason his tribe seemed relatively normal was because of his presence as the boss. Standing up, Li Ming dusted off the dirt from his body. I'll be leaving the tribe for a while. Bai Ling, you must take good care of my bloodline descendants. If you harm them out of hatred for me, believe me, I will make all the lizard men wish for death, but be unable to die. Faced with Li Ming's threat, Bai Ling's face turned pale behind the door. The goblin's voice was calm, but Bai Ling knew he was serious. This wasn't just an empty threat. Master, where are you going? The goblin didn't respond to her, and Bai Ling only heard the gradually fading footsteps. Half an hour later, at the southern riverbank of the tribe, a shadow flashed through the forest, and a figure darted out. The figure emerging from the forest was Li Ming. Looks like the flood season is over. Looking at the calm water surface, Li Ming thought to himself. Compared to the turbulent waves when he crossed the river a few months ago, the river's flow was now very slow. The water level had also dropped significantly. If I cross the river, the future should change. In the future predicted by the simulated life, he hadn't crossed the river to return to the goblin lair. Yes, Li Ming planned to return to the goblin lair to challenge Gobu Ba. With his current strength, Gobu Ba was no longer his match. His bloodline also belonged to Gobu Ba's lineage. Therefore, he was qualified to challenge Gobu Ba. Once he killed Gobu Ba, he would gain dozens of upper-level goblins. With these upper-level goblins joining, the tribe's strength would grow several times over. Without hesitation, Li Ming leaped forward and jumped into the river. A miraculous scene unfolded. Instead of sinking to the bottom, Li Ming ran on the water's surface. Wherever he passed, the water beneath his feet instantly froze. Li Ming crossed the several hundred meters wide river in one breath. Once he reached solid ground, Li Ming stopped on the riverbank. Looking back at the ice path spanning the river, Li Ming grinned. Magic is truly a wonderful thing, very practical. Under the river's current, the ice path quickly cracked and melted away downstream. System, start the simulated life. Consuming 10-second tier magic crystals, the simulated life begins. You crossed the river and returned to the goblin lair. You met Gobu Ba and issued a challenge to the goblins. You killed Gobu Ba and devoured his flesh. Your territory expanded rapidly, and your tribe thrived. A human airship appeared in the sky above the forest near the goblin lair. Please make the following choice. 1. You are curious about the airship and choose to observe. 2. You are curious about the airship's structure and decide to capture one for research. Choose 2. He had never seen humans until now. Li Ming was eager to see what human tools looked like. You watched the airship gradually disappear and decided to create a weapon capable of capturing it. After some research, you successfully created a giant crossbow. One day, a mysterious figure in a black robe appeared in the tribe and found you. You obtained a sacrificial disc to summon the barbarian god and smashed it in front of the black robe. The black robe was furious, and you died. As a transmigrator, all your efforts were in vain due to your arrogance. As the saying goes, weakness and ignorance are not obstacles to survival, but arrogance is. Keeping a low profile will allow you to live longer. The simulated life ends. Score 40. Please make the following reward choice. 1. Consume 10 scores to increase level by +1. 2. Consume 1 score to increase attribute by +1. 3. Consume 10 scores to increase luck by +1. 4. Consume 10 scores to increase physical regeneration skill level by +1. Choose 4. Consuming 40 scores, physical regeneration skill level +4. Li Meng sat down on the riverbank, staring blankly at the sky. What could have made me act so arrogantly in front of the black robe? Smashing the sacrificial disc in front of the black robe didn't seem like something he would do. No matter how arrogant he was, there was no reason to do that. Am I really that stupid? Li Meng stood up, muttering to himself. Could it be that the goblin body was making him dumber? What a pity! The future of the airship is gone. Thinking about the airship made Li Meng itch with curiosity. In this world, anything that could fly must be a good thing. Even if he couldn't replicate it, Li Meng wanted to find out how the airship flew. I'll have to wait for next month's simulated life. Knowing that angering the black robe would lead to death, changing the future wouldn't be difficult. Li Meng yawned and turned to wrap his arms around Bai Ling's waist. Then, holding the expressionless Bai Ling, he entered the house. In the following days, Li Meng focused on one task. That was to create little goblins, not humans. The other big goblins stayed in the tribe for 2 days before leading their respective hunting parties out to hunt. The male lizardmen began their lives as slaves, chopping wood, building wooden houses, mining, transporting clay. All the hard labor was done by the lizardmen. Iron cave, underground riverbank. What are you looking at? Keep moving. The bustling scene on the underground riverbank caught the attention of the passing lizardmen. Grayscale wanted to get closer for a look, but was blocked by a goblin. Grayscale had no choice but to continue walking forward with a basket of clay on his back. There were many burning mounds of earth on the riverbank. The source of the heat waves was those mounds. Around the mounds, a large number of goblins were hard at work. Some goblins were stepping on something, moving up and down. Others were hammering away at something fiery red, making a ding-ding-dang-dang sound. Chieftain, what are the goblins doing? The elder following behind, Grayscale asked. I don't know. It's too far to see clearly. The swamp lizardmen knew about human iron tools, but didn't know how they were made. Even if they got closer, they wouldn't understand that the goblins were smelting iron. Meanwhile, another group of male lizardmen was also laboring in the tribe. Looking towards the tribe, a large number of lizardmen were building wooden houses. The sound of thud-thud from the distant forest had been ongoing for more than 10 days. Thanks to the lizardmen's efforts, dozens of brand-new wooden houses have been added to the tribe. The newly built wooden houses were larger, with more comfortable and ample space inside. Hey, Nana. In the tribe, a familiar figure appeared, causing Blackscale, who was carrying wood, to pause. He hurriedly dropped the wood from his shoulder and rushed towards his wife. Stop! The goblin guarding in front of the female lizardman snarled at Blackscale, baring its teeth. The long spear and crossbow in its hands were pointed at Blackscale. Blackscale had to stop 5 meters away from his wife. Hey, Nana, with a big belly, shook her head at Blackscale. Are you okay? Looking down at his wife's round belly, Blackscale clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with humiliation and anger. Hey, Nana nodded, following her husband's gaze with a look of disgust at her own belly. I'm fine, Blackscale. I just wanted to see you. Their eyes met, and everything was understood without words. I will end these humiliating days. Please endure. Their meeting and exchange were observed by a goblin not far away. To be precise, it was a big goblin, and this big goblin was Li Meng. Boss, what do you think? Beside a huge animal pen, Gobu Chong asked with a flattering expression. Li Meng withdrew his gaze and glanced around the forest. There were many animal pens like this in the forest. Gobu Chong, are you interested in raising pigs? Raising pigs? Gobu Chong looked at his boss with a face full of questions. With a slight turn of his head, Li Meng looked at the animal pen with wild boars. Go bring a wild boar over. Make sure it's a male. Although he didn't know what the boss wanted with a wild boar, Gobu Chong didn't ask further. He quickly ran towards the animal pen with wild boars. Then, With more than 10 goblin underlings holding bark ropes, he entered the pen. All that could be heard was the oink-oink of pigs. A male wild boar was dragged over by more than 10 goblins. The male wild boar was quite large. Its shoulder height was about 1.3 meters, just a bit shorter than a goblin. It was also very strong, and more than 10 goblins could barely hold it. With a slight struggle, the wild boar could make the goblins on one side stumble. "Boss, the wild boar is here." Gobuchang struggled to pull the bark rope. The wild boar was struggling fiercely, constantly retreating. With brute force, more than 10 goblins could move the wild boar. Li Meng stepped forward and approached the wild boar. "Boss, it's dangerous." Seeing the boss walk directly towards the wild boar, Gobuchang quickly warned. Li Meng didn't stop. A miraculous scene unfolded. As Li Meng approached the wild boar, it suddenly calmed down. Its large eyes stared intently at Li Meng. Li Meng came to the wild boar's side and stroked its neck. The wild boar seemed to enjoy Li Meng's touch, snuggling into his embrace. This scene left the surrounding goblins astonished. The male wild boar was usually so fierce. How could it be so calm in front of the boss? "Bring the stuff over." After stroking for a while, Li Meng called to a few goblin underlings not far away. The goblin underlings hurriedly carried over a pig's saddle made of animal hide. Li Meng moved around the wild boar, fitting it with the pig saddle. Although the pig saddle was simple, it was usable. "What's the boss doing?" Seeing the boss fitting the wild boar with animal gear, Gobuchang muttered. After tying the last piece of animal hide rope, Li Meng pushed the pig saddle. It was stable and solid. Patting the wild boar's back, Li Meng swung onto it. Oink oink! The weight on its back made the wild boar a bit uncomfortable. It shook its head and oinked a few times before calming down. "Go!" Li Meng shouted. The wild boar shot out as if startled. Oinking and panting, it ran through the forest. Its speed was extremely fast, darting into the forest in a flash. Riding on the wild boar's back, Li Meng leaned slightly forward, grabbing the wild boar's left ear. With a pull to the left, the wild boar running in the forest turned left. Gobuchang only saw the boss riding the wild boar into the depths of the forest. Soon, the boss rode the wild boar back. Under Li Meng's control, the wild boar, carrying him, dashed around the tribe. "Get out of the way!" Seeing the wild boar charging over, a few lizard men carrying wood hurriedly fled. Just as the wild boar was about to hit them, the wild boar suddenly turned and ran past them, panting. "What's the boss doing?" The goblins in the tribe looked curiously at the boss riding the wild boar around the tribe. The lizard men were also baffled. Only Bai Ling, standing at the door of a wooden house, had a look of uncertainty on her face. After playing for a while, Li Meng returned to the animal pen. Dismounting from the wild boar, Li Meng patted its neck. "Gobuchang, what do you think? Want to fight riding wild boars?" Gobuchang's eyes lit up, nodding vigorously. The boss riding the wild boar looked so cool. With the wild boar's speed, they could hunt those fast-running forest deer in the future. "Then let's raise pigs." Male wild boars have more strength and endurance. You need to build a bond and understanding with the wild boars from a young age. If it weren't for the heart-speech skill, the wild boar wouldn't have let him ride it. In the future predicted by the simulated life, he would form a wild boar cavalry. Forming a wild boar cavalry was also in line with the future. Li Meng on the riverbank turned and ran into the forest. The forest was immediately filled with startled birds scattering. The commotion spread deeper into the forest. In the following days, Li Meng headed south. Although he encountered some of Gobu Ba's hunting parties along the way, Li Meng avoided contact with them. What would normally take over half a month, Li Meng completed in just 5 days to reach his destination. It was a new day in the morning, in the forest outside the Goblin Cave. In the dim forest, a shadow flashed by. So fast, it disappeared into the depths of the forest in the blink of an eye. Moments later, in the forest outside the goblin nest, Li Meng leisurely walked out. "It's Gobu Meng. Gobu Meng has returned." Li Meng's appearance caught the attention of the goblins playing at the cave entrance. Seeing Gobu Meng return, they all looked surprised. Gobu-chan's hunting party had been missing for a long, long time. Unexpectedly, Gobu-meng returned today. Gobu-meng, where's Gobu-chan? A big goblin approached Li Meng. None of your business. Get lost. Li Meng's blunt rebuke left the approaching big goblin stunned. Its body instinctively stepped aside. It wasn't until Li Meng walked past that it reacted. Gobu-meng, you've been gone so long. The boss won't let you off. The big goblin glared angrily, roaring. Perfect. I won't let him off either. Li Meng's words left the big goblin dumbfounded, with a mocking expression. A mere big goblin daring to challenge the boss. It was simply courting death. Under the watchful eyes of the goblins outside the cave, Li Meng entered the dim entrance. The familiar environment and that familiar stench made Li Meng frown slightly. Goblins might like this environment, but he certainly didn't. Gobu-meng, how dare you come back? Just as he entered the cave, a goblin soldier strode out. It held a stone axe in its hand, glaring angrily. The disappearance of Gobu-chan's hunting party had made the boss extremely angry. They, the underlings, had suffered greatly. 3 goblin soldiers had been eaten alive by the boss. How could Gobu-yuan not be angry? Haha, isn't this Gobu-meng? You finally returned. At this moment, a voice filled with excitement echoed from the depths of the cave. The sound made Gobu-yuan's body tremble. It quickly stepped aside, clearing the path. On a stone platform not far away, Gobu-ba remained high and mighty. Its gaze towards Li Meng was filled with excitement. Quick, tell me, did you bring the humans back for me? Standing before the stone platform, Li Meng looked up at the towering Gobu-ba. Months ago, when he first saw Gobu-ba, Li Meng was almost scared to death. Now, seeing Gobu-ba again, he felt nothing. Li Meng's direct gaze made Gobu-ba frown, his eyes filled with anger. Gobu-meng, how dare you look directly at me? You trash born from a groundhog's belly. Kneel before me. Gobu-ba roared, glaring angrily. The surrounding goblins were so frightened they retreated repeatedly. Even the goblin soldiers were scared into kneeling on the ground. Facing Gobu-ba's furious roar, Li Meng grinned. Gobu-ba, today this trash is going to challenge you. These words left Gobu-ba stunned. Huh. Gobu-ba's wild laughter echoed in the cave. The goblins in the cave also burst into laughter. Some goblins even clutched their stomachs, rolling on the ground in laughter. All the goblins looked at Li Meng as if he were an idiot. The boss was the goblin leader, and a mere big goblin dared to challenge the goblin leader. Huh. It seems that going out has made you trash born from a groundhog's belly even dumber. Gobu-ba laughed, pounding his chest. Tears even flowed from his huge eyes. Gobu-ba, do you dare to fight me? Li Meng shouted. His voice was so loud, it was like a thunderclap, deafening. The laughter in the cave came to an abrupt halt. All the goblins looked at Li Meng under the stone platform with uncertainty. Interesting, very interesting, Gobu-meng. I will make you pay for your stupidity. Gobu-ba grinned hideously, truly enraged. A mere big goblin dared to challenge him recklessly. Gobu-ba picked up a giant stone axe beside him. His massive body leaped off the stone platform. Boom! With a boom, the ground shook. Gobu-ba's huge body landed steadily on the ground before Li Meng. In front of Gobu-ba, Li Meng was just a tiny figure. Die! Gobu-ba roared, raising the stone axe with both hands and slashing down at Li Meng. Before the axe arrived, the gust of wind did. Gobu-ba's face was twisted with ferocity. He could already imagine the scene of Gobu-meng being split in two by a stone axe. Li Meng didn't dodge, looking expressionlessly at the descending axe. This strike, the giant stone axe struck heavily on Li Meng's shoulder. Boom! At the moment the stone axe struck Li Meng's shoulder, the giant stone axe shattered with a bang, sending fragments flying everywhere. The immense force made Li Meng's body sink downward. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and Li Meng's feet were already embedded in it. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Seeing Li Meng unharmed, while the stone axe in his hand was reduced to a wooden stick, Gobu-ba was dumbfounded, utterly incredulous. He couldn't imagine how Gobu-meng had withstood his full-force axe. Gobu-ba, looking as if he'd seen a ghost, retreated repeatedly. The surrounding goblins were also stunned. What? Try to escape already. Li Meng still looked expressionlessly at the retreating Gobo Ba. Gobo Meng, you're courting death. Gobo Ba was enraged, throwing away the wooden stick in his hand. Then he raised his massive fist and charged at Li Meng with a few strides. The huge fist swung, punching towards Li Meng. Die! Li Meng snorted coldly. His right foot stepped back, stabilizing his body. His right hand clenched into a fist, simply punching to meet Gobo Ba's fist. At the moment of punching, a wave of air exploded from in front of Li Meng. Boom! The two fists collided heavily. Crack! With a crack sound. At the moment of impact, Gobo Ba's hand twisted out of shape. The tendons and bones shattered and broke instantly. Gobo Ba let out a miserable scream. The immense force not only shattered Gobo Ba's body, it also sent Gobo Ba's huge body flying. It flew dozens of meters before crashing onto the stone platform with a boom. Li Meng followed closely, leaping up. His body shot towards Gobo Ba like an arrow. Die! With a shout, Li Meng punched straight at Gobo Ba's heart. Li Meng's punch directly pierced through Gobo Ba's chest. Most of his arm was embedded in Gobo Ba's chest. With a pull, a giant heart was grasped in Li Meng's hand. Before the stunned Gobo Ba could regain consciousness, Li Meng had already taken his life. The massive body slowly slid to the ground. Li Meng stood atop Gobo Ba's enormous body, holding a heart in his hand. His gaze was cold and expressionless as he looked at the goblins in the cave. Faced with Li Meng's gaze, the goblins in the cave were filled with fear. Even the few goblin warriors retreated repeatedly. Come on, I accept your challenge. Li Meng grinned and roared with all his might. The thunderous roar sent a shiver through the goblins in the cave. Gobo Meng, Gobo Meng. The weakest of the big goblins was the first to submit. With a thud, it knelt on the ground, shouting loudly. Once one goblin led, the others quickly followed suit, bowing down. Next were the goblin soldiers, followed by the goblin warriors. All the goblins knelt down, shouting in unison. The sound was deafening, echoing through the cave. Faced with the worship of the goblins, Li Meng gave a sinister smile. Good. With this, the higher goblins here were as good as his. Li Meng opened his sharp mouth and tore off a large piece of heart meat. Standing on Gobo Ba's corpse, Li Meng gnawed on the heart while enjoying the goblins' cheers. Devour skill activated. Acquired skill Berserk. The system's notification made Li Meng look down at Gobo Ba beneath him. Gobo Ba was too careless. He didn't even have time to use the Berserk skill before being killed. Perhaps Gobo Ba was just like him when he was killed by the Black Robe. Arrogance and confidence often lead to one's downfall. With a leap, Li Meng jumped off Gobo Ba's body. The body is yours. Upon hearing this, the surrounding goblins showed greedy expressions. In a frenzy, they rushed towards Gobo Ba's body. Even the weakest big goblins dared to compete with goblin warriors for the leader's corpse. Nearly 100 goblins scrambled madly over Gobo Ba's body. Li Meng climbed onto a stone platform and sat down at the edge. He watched the chaotic and bloody scene below with great interest. Devour skill activated. Acquired skill limb enhancement. With a thought, Li Meng opened his character panel. Name, Gobo Meng. Race, Goblin. Level, 15. Strength, 825. Defense, 759. Agility, 341. Magic, 86. Charm, 0. Luck, 11. Devour. Chance to acquire skills from devoured magical beasts. Steel Skin, 2. Strength plus 600. Defense plus 600. Agility plus 200. Windblade, LV1. Body Regeneration, LV5. Heart Speech, LV1. Ice Element Control, LV1. Berserk, LV1. Limb Enhancement, LV1. Strength plus 50. Agility plus 50. Seeing the magic attribute value gave Li Meng a headache. The magic value was really hard to improve. So many skills, yet none related to the magic attribute. Using points to increase the magic attribute seemed wasteful. Shaking his head, Li Meng sighed and casually tossed the heart aside. The goblins below scrambled for it again. It took over half an hour for Gobu Ba's body to be completely devoured by the goblins. You come here. The three goblin warriors named by Li Meng looked at each other. They took a few steps forward with their massive strides, approaching the stone platform. Goblin warriors were the upper echelon goblins, second only to the goblin leader. They were huge, standing at 2.5 meters tall. Their physique was robust like a bear. Muscles bulged all over, clearly indicating their strength. Gobu Tian, go sound the war horn. Recall all the hunting parties outside. Gobu Tian looked at the small Li Meng on the stone platform with fear. It nodded and turned a stride out of the cave. Gobu Di, Gobu Sure, take all the goblins here and follow me. The ones left in the cave were all upper echelon goblins. At the very least, they were big goblins. If this batch of upper echelon goblins was brought back to the tribe, the population would increase several times over within half a year. The potential of the newborns would also be greater. Boss, where are we going? Gobu Di asked from below the stone platform. Li Meng leaped down from the stone platform, landing steadily on the ground. Back to the tribe, Li Meng strode towards the cave exit. Wherever he passed, the goblins stepped aside in awe. Gobu Di and Gobu Sure exchanged glances. Now Gobu Meng was the new boss, and the boss's orders had to be followed. The two goblin warriors followed behind Li Meng. The other goblins followed behind Gobu Di and Gobu Sure. Li Meng led the group of upper echelon goblins out of the cave in a grand procession. On a mountaintop outside the cave, Li Meng heard the longhorn sound. He also saw Gobu Tian approaching. Gobu Tian, you stay and guard the goblin nest. Tell the hunting parties who the new boss is when they return. I'll be back soon. Gobu Tian nodded and stepped aside. Under Gobu Tian's watchful gaze, Li Meng led a group of goblins into the depths of the forest. It took Li Meng 5 days to arrive, but it took over half a month to return. The group of nearly 100 upper echelon goblins traveled intermittently, hunting as they went. It wasn't until the afternoon of the 17th day that they reached the riverbank. Keep up, cross quickly. Li Meng didn't stop at the riverbank and stepped directly into the river. As his foot touched the water, the surface instantly froze. This miraculous scene left the upper echelon goblins behind him dumbfounded. The boss could use magic? Seeing its small figure, Gobu Di and Gobu Sure's faces showed fervor. That was magic, a power that only the legendary Goblin King had a chance to awaken. Yet the magical power of the Goblin King appeared in the small big goblin. What are you standing around for? Keep up. Seeing his goblin underlings staring blankly at the riverbank, Li Meng's shout snapped them back to reality. A mass of goblins hurriedly rushed onto the ice path, following behind the boss. Thus, Li Meng led his upper echelon goblin underlings across the river smoothly. Half an hour later, in the forest tribe, a large group of upper echelon goblins emerging from the forest caught the attention of the goblins in the tribe. It's the boss is back. When they saw that the leader was the boss, the goblin underlings erupted in cheers. The upper echelon goblins, following Li Meng, curiously observed everything in front of them. From the goblins, they could sense the aura of bloodline descendants. This indicated that the goblins here shared the same bloodline as them. Isn't that Gobu Di and Gobu Sure? Yeah. How did they end up here? Oh no, did Gobu Ba attack? There were many goblins in the tribe from Gobu Chang's hunting party. Naturally, they recognized Gobu Di and Gobu Sure. Boss. Just then, Gobu Chang came running over excitedly. When he saw the group of higher-ranking goblins behind the boss, Gobu Chang stumbled and almost fell to the ground. Gobu Di, Gobu Sure. The appearance of the two goblin warriors made Gobu Chang's face turn pale. With Gobu Di and Gobu Sure here, it meant the thought in his mind filled Gobu Chang with terror, and he collapsed to the ground. Gobu Ba has been killed by me. Now I'm the leader of the bloodline tribe. Gobu Ba has been killed by the boss. Gobu Chang, who was lying on the ground, was momentarily stunned. Then he showed a look of wild joy and crawled over to Li Meng. He lay on the ground, kissing Li Meng's feet. Boss, you're mighty. Boss, you're amazing. The goblins gathered around, hearing this news, also shouted with fervor, "Goblin, Goblin." For a moment, the loud chants of the goblins echoed throughout the tribe. This caught the attention of some female lizard men in the wooden huts. Many doors and windows were pushed open. Lizard heads peeked out one by one. After a while, the goblins' shouts finally subsided. In just over a month, the tribe had changed dramatically. Larger wooden huts spread throughout the forest, stretching as far as the eye could see. "Boss, the new throne cave has been built. Bai Ling and those female lizard men have already moved in." In the tribe, Li Meng led a group of higher-ranking goblins, following behind Gobuchang. As they ventured deeper into the tribe, they soon saw a massive wooden hut. The hut was built around a towering giant tree. It looked like a mushroom. Its diameter was over 50 meters. At the entrance of the hut, Bai Ling stood obediently. In nearly a month, Bai Ling's big belly had disappeared. This indicated that during his absence, Bai Ling had given birth. Gobuchang arranged them all. "Then come see me." After leaving this instruction, Li Meng strode towards the wooden hut. Gobuchang, on the other hand, faced the group of higher-ranking goblins with a look of fear. Follow me." The appearance of so many higher-ranking goblins gave Gobuchang a sense of crisis. He had to do everything the boss ordered. Otherwise, there would be no place for him by the boss's side. At the entrance of the hut, Bai Ling stared intently at the departing higher-ranking goblins. Her face was very unpleasant. That big goblin had been gone for more than half a month. Unexpectedly, he returned with so many higher-ranking goblins. There were even 2 goblin warriors. The arrival of these higher-ranking goblins made Bai Ling realize the seriousness of the situation. "Master!" Seeing her master approaching, Bai Ling's expression shifted slightly. She placed her hands on her lower abdomen and bowed respectfully. Li Meng grinned and circled around Bai Ling. The tail has grown out." Li Meng curiously looked at the short tail emerging from the bee's skirt. He reached out and grabbed Bai Ling's short tail. It was a bit cool and soft, almost boneless. Bai Ling's body trembled, and she let out a soft hum. "Master, no, don't grab my tail." Bai Ling's eyes were filled with allure, a flash of disgust passing through them. Seeing Bai Ling's trembling body, Li Meng grinned. "What? Is it very sensitive?" Bai Ling clutched her beast skirt tightly and nodded slightly. With a wicked smile, Li Meng reached out and slapped Bai Ling's plump buttocks. "Go, bring all the unassigned female lizard men here." Bai Ling's face changed slightly, a trace of sadness flashing in her eyes. Those tribesmen ultimately couldn't escape the fate of becoming breeding tools. Watching Bai Ling's departing figure, Li Meng grinned. He enjoyed seeing Bai Ling's look of humiliation and reluctance. Li Meng sat down on the steps at the entrance, his gaze fixed on Bai Ling's retreating figure, admiring her voluptuous body. Before long, Gobuchang returned with a group of higher-ranking goblins. "Boss, their caves have all been arranged." Li Meng's gaze swept over the group of higher-ranking goblins outside the wooden hut. His eyes finally settled on Gobu Di and Gobu Shur. From today on, the task of the goblin soldiers and goblin warriors is only one: to reproduce. Reproduce? The boss's words made the group of higher-ranking goblins show expressions of greed and excitement. Reproduction was a trait ingrained in the goblins' genes. In the past, goblins could only fight for mating rights through force. It's the lizard men, the female lizard men. At this moment, Bai Ling returned with a group of female lizard men. Seeing those female lizard men, the group of higher-ranking goblins was extremely excited. Their eyes greedily examined the female lizard men. Facing the goblins' greedy gazes, the female lizard men showed expressions of fear. "You all can gain mating rights. Remember, take good care of them. If even one is missing, be prepared to be smashed in a meat paste by Benbin." These goblins came from the goblin nest. Under Goboba's influence, they had become quite brutal. Especially towards female creatures, they were extremely cruel. Often, they would eat the female creatures during mating due to their perverse desires. To deal with these brutal goblins, mere admonishment wasn't enough. They needed to be intimidated. Binbin stood up beside them. Holding a spiked club in both hands, he smashed it onto the ground with a bang. A huge pit appeared on the ground. All the goblins looked at Binbin with fear. They had long noticed the big guy sitting at the entrance of the wooden hut. Since Binbin was fully armored, the goblins didn't know what he was. Only now did the goblins recognize Binbin as an ogre. Goba sure. Did you understand what I said? Facing the boss's expressionless gaze, Gobu D and Gobu sure couldn't help but take a step back. The two goblin warriors nodded vigorously. Boss, I understand. I won't eat them. Looking at the huge spike club in Binbin's hand, Gobu D swallowed hard. If he got hit, he would definitely die. Gobushir quickly patted his chest to assure. Boss, I'll listen to you. Slightly turning his head, Li Ming looked at Bai Ling. Bai Ling, come here. Bai Ling silently stepped forward and stood beside Li Ming. At this point, Li Ming began assigning the female lizard men to the goblins. Gobu sure. Each of you choose 10 female lizard men to take back to your caves. Gobu D and Gobu Shure's eyes lit up. They quickly turned and walked towards a group of female lizard men, facing the approaching goblin warriors. The massive bodies made the female lizard men panic and retreat repeatedly. After a commotion, Gobu D and Gobu Shure each took 10 female lizard men away. The female lizard man followed behind the two goblin warriors with a look of despair. The stronger the goblin, the more ferocious they are. Their journey might not end well. Standing beside Li Ming, Bai Ling also looked at the tribespeople following the goblin warriors with a face full of reluctance. Her fists were clenched tightly, her sharp nails almost piercing through her scales. In front of the wooden house, the allocation continued. The number of female lizard men that could be allocated was divided according to the strength of the goblins. Goblin warriors could be allocated 10 female lizard men. Goblin soldiers could be allocated 5 female lizard men. Big goblins could be allocated 3 female lizard men. Due to the insufficient number of female lizard men, the number allocated to big goblins was reduced to 2. In no time, over 100 female lizard men were divided up. Every goblin left the front of the wooden house excitedly with their allocated female lizard men. Standing up, Li Ming dusted off his clothes. With a slight glance, Li Ming looked at Bai Ling, who was expressionless beside him. You should be grateful you met me. Otherwise, you lizard men would just be meat. Although it was hard to discern the changes in the lizardman's expression, Li Ming could still see something in Bai Ling's eyes. You know better than I do how ferocious goblins are. Would they obey just because of your words? With a grin, Li Ming forcibly picked up Bai Ling by the waist. Bai Ling did not struggle, her gaze fixed intently on Li Ming. I am their leader. They will listen to me. That's what goblins are. Li Ming's words left Bai Ling silent. Thinking back now, it seemed that indeed no tribespeople had died from goblin harm. Not only had no female lizard men died at the hands of goblins, but they could also leave the wooden house to wander in the forest. If they wanted to bathe in the river, the goblins did not stop them. Even if the goblins' gazes were greedy, they wouldn't forcefully mate with them. Goblins are indeed ferocious. They don't think about anything other than eating and mating. But precisely because of this, as their leader, I can better restrain them. In a strictly hierarchical goblin society, my orders are even above their lives. This statement is both true and false. If the leader's orders were above life, Gobu-chan wouldn't have betrayed Gobu-ba. This premise needs an addition, which is the direct bloodline descendants. Gobu-chan's bloodline came from Gobu-ba's paternal line. Therefore, his loyalty to Gobu-ba wouldn't be above his life. Li Ming's ability to restrain the goblins in the tribe relied on strength. Great power could also earn the goblins' loyalty. Though this loyalty wouldn't be above life, the goblins dared not disobey Li Ming's orders. As he spoke, Li Ming carried Bai Ling into the wooden house with large strides. Upon entering the wooden house, the layout made Li Ming roll his eyes. Such a large wooden house, yet the space inside wasn't divided into rooms. Just a couple of pillars, with a bed behind each pillar. At the far end opposite the door was a large bed. Calling it a bed was a stretch, as it was just a layer of animal hide spread on the ground. Seeing this, Li Ming sighed inwardly. It seemed he needed to study carpentry well. Li Ming's arrival startled the female lizard men inside the house. Many female lizard men hurriedly put on their animal hide bras. Holding Bai Ling, Li Ming sniffed the air with his nose. A rich, milky fragrance filled the room. A female lizard man sitting on the bed caught Li Ming's attention. She looked panicked, hiding something behind her back. "What are you hiding? Show it." Li Ming's words made Bai Ling's delicate body tremble. Her expression shifted, and she nodded to the female lizard man. Only then did the female lizard man nervously take out a bamboo tube from behind her back. Li Ming put Bai Ling down and walked over to the female lizard man. Standing beside her, Li Ming took the bamboo tube from her hand. There was water inside the bamboo tube. Li Ming felt it sloshing. Glancing at the female lizard man with her head lowered, Li Ming opened the stopper. As soon as the stopper was opened, a rich, milky fragrance wafted into his nose. Li Ming looked into the wooden tube. He found that the water inside was white. Li Ming understood what it was. Putting the stopper back, Li Ming returned the wooden tube to the female lizard man. "Bai Ling, who did you give yours to?" With a slight glance, Li Ming looked at Bai Ling's towering chest. Only then did Li Ming notice that the animal hide bra on Bai Ling's chest was already wet. Bai Ling slightly lowered her head, answering Li Ming expressionlessly. "To the tribespeople who needed it." With a grin, Li Ming grabbed Bai Ling's hand. Then he led Bai Ling towards the main bed. The main bed was slightly elevated. There were 4 steps, about a meter high. Li Ming lay back on the bed, hands behind his head. "I approve of this. No need to hide it. The tribe needs strong labor. Young goblins have no nursing period. They can eat meat right after birth. The milk of female lizard men given to male lizard men is a good use of resources. After all, male lizard men do all the hard labor. With milk to supplement their nutrition, male lizard men can have more strength for work." Looking at the master lying on the bed, a flash of surprise crossed Bai Ling's eyes. She didn't expect the master to agree to them giving milk to the male lizard men. With the master's approval, they no longer needed to do this secretly. Bai Ling turned and spoke a few words in lizard man language to the female lizard men in the room. The female lizard men looked delighted, glancing at the master with surprise. Then each female lizard man took out their hidden wooden tubes. They removed their bras and started squeezing in front of Li Ming. Li Ming watched with interest. Due to the short gestation period of goblins, female lizard men would be in a nursing period throughout the year. There are pros and cons. The pros are for the male lizard men, while the cons require providing more food to the female lizard men. Without sufficient nutritional supplements, being in a long-term nursing period would only weaken the female lizard men's bodies. Although he was just a goblin now, he valued promises. In non-essential situations, he would keep his promises. "Bai Ling, come." Lying on the bed, Li Ming looked lecherously at the voluptuous Bai Ling. Facing the master's disgusting gaze, Bai Ling frowned slightly. Resigned, she removed her animal hide bra and skirt. Before long, the wooden house was filled with noise. The female lizard men inside the wooden house secretly glanced at the master and Bai Ling, the high priestess. The scent filling the house made all the female lizard men restless. Some female lizard men tightly clamped their legs, writhing on the bed. Not until the afternoon of the next day did the wooden house quiet down. Inside the wooden house, Li Ming contentedly got up from a female lizard man. Looking around, all the female lizard men were exhausted and asleep on the beds. "What is your name?" The sudden voice in her mind made the female lizard man, curled up on the bed, freeze. She looked at the big goblin beside her with uncertainty. Could the voice in her mind be the master speaking to her? I'm called Hui Nana." Li Ming grinned and gave Hui Nana's round backside a playful slap. Then, feeling quite satisfied, he walked out. Among the many female lizard men in the wooden hut, Li Ming only knew Bai Ling's name. The reason, of course, was the language barrier. But now, Li Ming felt there was no need to hide anymore. That said, he didn't really need to know the names of the female lizard men. Asking Hui Nana's name was just a whim. Queen Nana shivered as her backside was touched. She looked at her departing master with a complex expression. This goblin in front of her was different from the goblins she knew. His eyes lacked the usual savagery and madness of goblins, giving off a very rational and intelligent vibe. It was already afternoon when the creaky door of the throne cave in the tribe opened. Li Meng emerged from the wooden hut, looking refreshed. Seeing Binbin sleeping soundly outside the door, Li Meng smiled. Without waking Binbin, Li Meng headed towards the nursery. "Boss, your bloodline descendants are over here." Led by a goblin, Li Meng entered a larger nursery. He didn't go inside the wooden hut, but stopped at the entrance. Inside, a group of young goblins was playing and frolicking. There were over 100 of them, making the hut buzz with chatter. When they noticed Li Meng at the door, the noise abruptly stopped. All the young goblins huddled in the corner, looking at Li Meng with nothing but fear in their eyes. Young goblins have an instinctive sense of danger when facing adult goblins. After watching for a while at the door, Li Meng turned and left. Goblins have no concept of family. Even their mothers are just female creatures in their eyes. Once they reach adulthood, mothers become nothing more than breeding tools. If the female creatures don't separate from the young goblins in time after giving birth, they might even become food for the young ones. After leaving the nursery, Li Meng headed to the carpentry workshop. Before he even got close, he heard the sound of wood being shaved from the wooden huts. "Boss, what brings you here?" In the largest carpentry workshop, Li Meng found Goblin. Seeing the busy goblins in the workshop, Li Meng nodded in satisfaction. Goblins might be a bit dim-witted, but they are obedient and hardworking. While they lack creativity, their ability to mimic is even stronger than humans. "I need to make some big things. Clear this place out for me." Soon, airships would appear in the sky near the goblin nest. Knowing this, Li Meng wasn't planning to do nothing. The future predicted by the simulated life could serve as an important source of intelligence. In the following days, Li Meng was busy in the carpentry workshop studying large ballistae. Goblin and a group of goblins assisted him. On the afternoon of the 7th day, outside the workshop, a massive ballista was carried into the forest by the goblins. A ballista is essentially a larger version of a crossbow, with a structure not much different from the single crossbows used by goblins. It just has an added winch to pull the bowstring. "Boss, the bolts are here." 3 goblins carried over a bolt about 1.5 meters long, made entirely of low-carbon steel. The bolt had iron fins at the tail to help maintain balance and direction during flight. "String it up." At Li Meng's command, the 3 goblins quickly turned the winch. With a creak-creak sound, the bowstring was gradually drawn back. It took over a minute for the bowstring to be successfully cocked. The goblins carrying the bolt then placed it into the ballista's slot. "Boss, everything's ready." With all the pre-launch preparations complete, it was time to test the power of the ballista. Li Meng stepped forward to aim the ballista at a large tree several hundred meters away. Whoosh! Li Meng pulled the trigger. With a click, a piercing whistle followed. The massive bolt shot out like a black streak, slicing through the dim forest and heading straight into its depths. Thud! Over 200 meters away, there was a boom as the massive bolt embedded deeply into the tree trunk. The entire arrowhead was buried, and the tail was trembling violently. Seeing this, a hint of disappointment flashed in Li Meng's eyes. The ballista's power was far too low, much less than he had anticipated. The bolt started losing altitude after just 200 meters. How could such power satisfy Li Meng? Is it a problem with the materials and structure? Li Meng pondered as he looked at the ballista before him. The materials were already at their limit. There was no wood tougher than ironwood in the goblin forest. Spider silk rope was also the best material for bowstrings in terms of elasticity and toughness. It seems I'll have to think of a solution with the structure. Li Meng turned and walked towards the carpentry workshop. "Take the ballista back." Upon hearing this, the goblin underlings quickly swarmed around, lifting the ballista and carrying it back to the workshop. In the following days, the carpentry workshop was once again filled with the sound of wood being shaved, occasionally accompanied by the thud-thud of hammering. Boss! One afternoon, Gobuku rushed into the workshop. Inside, Li Meng was meticulously refining a massive bow frame. Boss, something's wrong. We've discovered the pigmen tribe in the eastern forest. Gobuku ran to the boss's side, panting. Hearing this, Li Meng's heart tightened. The pigmen tribe had indeed appeared. It had only been a little over a month. The black robe was supposed to appear after the airship, so the timing shouldn't be off. Don't engage with the pigmen tribe. If you encounter them, avoid them. The simulated life predicted many future scenarios. Those futures were known intelligence. To develop the future he envisioned, he had to proceed cautiously. Boss, can't we eat them? Pigmen meat is much tastier than wild boar. Gobuku's face was filled with greed. Remembering the taste of pigmen, he almost drooled. Now is not the time for war with the pigmen tribe. Tell the hunting party in the eastern forest not to engage with the pigmen. If they encounter them, avoid them. Go. All right, boss, I'm on it. Though disappointed, Gobuku still had to follow the boss's orders. He turned and dashed out. The next morning, the long silent carpentry workshop was bustling again. This time, an even larger ballista was carried out by more than 10 goblins. Compared to the previous ballista, this one was much bigger, almost twice the size of the last. Its structure was also more complex. More than a dozen goblins carried the ballista and set it down in the clearing of the forest. This time, the ballista had 3 giant bow arms. The 3 massive bow arms were arranged with 2 facing forward and 1 backward. The ballista before him was designed by Li Meng based on the structure of a triple bow ballista. But it was only similar. There were significant differences in many details. String it up. This time, the triple bow ballista had 2 winches. 6 goblins hurriedly moved forward, panting as they cranked the winches. The immense tension made the bowstring and bow arms creak. With the help of the roller structure, the power of the 3 bow arms was concentrated together. It took over a minute for the bowstring to be fully cocked. Li Meng lifted the giant bolt, carried by 3 goblins, with one hand and placed it into the loading slot. This time, the bolt was even larger, about 2 meters long. After completing the preparations for firing, the experiment officially began. Li Meng aimed the ballista at a large tree several hundred meters away. Li Meng took a deep breath. His gaze was fixed on the target tree, not far away. With a forceful squeeze, he pulled the trigger. Whoosh! The ballista shook. The piercing sound of the bowstring snapping back echoed through the forest. A black streak shot through the air, heading deep into the forest. Boom! Almost instantly, a loud crash resounded from deep within the forest. A large tree, 300 meters away, collapsed with a thunderous crash. The bolt pierced straight through the tree, and a massive impact shattered the trunk. After penetrating one tree, the bolt continued with undiminished momentum, embedding itself into another tree 100 meters away. A third of the bolt was buried in the trunk. The terrifying power left the goblin minions dumbfounded. The commotion here caused chaos and disorder in the tribe. Li Meng was also startled by the terrifying power. A tree that would take 3 people holding hands to encircle was pierced straight through by the bolt. If it were fired in an arc, the range could easily exceed a kilometer. But the bow arms need to be thicker. Earlier, when the bowstring was being cocked, Li Meng heard the cracking sound of the bow arms breaking. With the current strength of the triple bow ballista, the bow arms would break after only a few uses. The limit wasn't the bowstring, but the bow arms. If the bow arms were thickened, the ballista's power would be even greater, because the power of the crossbow is related to the tension of the bow arms. Very good, not bad, take it back. With that, Li Meng returned to the carpentry workshop to continue strengthening and adjusting the triple bow ballista. Time passed little by little, and day after day went by. On the afternoon of the 5th day, in the carpentry workshop, Boss, do you think this will work? Gobuku, along with a group of goblin minions, found the boss in the carpentry workshop. Li Meng, who was assembling the triple bow ballista, put down his work. Li Meng took the harpoon bolt from the shoulders of 3 goblins with one hand. He weighed the bolt in his hand, nodding in satisfaction. Although the harpoon tip was a bit rough, it was usable. Very good. How many have you made? Gobuku chuckled, counting on his fingers. When he reached 10, Gobuku looked confused. All right, put them all down. That's enough. Gobu Ge's face lit up with joy, and he quickly instructed the minions to put down the harpoon bolts from their shoulders. Looking at the 3 massive ballistae in the wooden house, Li Meng grinned. With these 3 ballistae, they could set off tomorrow. About half an hour later, Li Meng left the carpentry workshop. "Binbin, let's go." Binbin had been waiting at the entrance of the carpentry workshop. With Binbin in tow, Li Meng headed towards the direction of the throne cave. By now, the sky was gradually darkening. Bai Ling. On the way back to the throne cave, Li Meng encountered Bai Ling. Bai Ling, escorted by several goblins, was heading towards the throne cave. "Master." Seeing the master approaching, Bai Ling slightly lowered her head. At this moment, Bai Ling was already sporting a big belly. In the second week after returning to the tribe, the female lizard men in the throne cave became pregnant one after another, thanks to Li Meng's efforts. Li Meng glanced sideways at the depths of the forest behind Bai Ling. "Did you go to the Iron Cave?" The expansion work of the tribe had been completed half a month ago. Now, all the male lizard men were working over at the Iron Cave. Once the first lactation period began, the female lizard men would continue to lactate. Li Meng glanced at the bamboo tube in Bai Ling's hand. He could smell the rich scent of milk from the bamboo tube. It was clear that Bai Ling was delivering milk. Ever since Li Meng allowed the female lizard men to deliver milk, it had become a routine for them. They milked in the morning and delivered the milk to the male lizard men in the afternoon. Before dark, they would each return to their own caves. Since the offerings were mostly couples, each male lizard man could drink the milk of his own wife. As for whom Bai Ling's milk was delivered to, it wasn't hard to guess. It was certainly given to the weakest male lizard man. Li Meng didn't bother to interfere with the lizardmen's way of supporting each other. Male lizardmen having milk to supplement their nutrition and maintain their health and strength wasn't a bad thing. Bai Ling nodded slightly. Li Meng didn't say much more. The two walked together towards the direction of the throne cave. "Master, is the cave for smelting iron?" As they walked, Bai Ling suddenly asked. Li Meng turned his head, looking at Bai Ling with a half-smile. "Why do you think it's called the Iron Cave?" The master's response made Bai Ling's heart sink. A trace of disbelief flashed in her eyes. Bai Ling wouldn't be surprised if any barbarian in the goblin forest was smelting iron. But goblins smelting iron was unimaginable. How could goblins, with their intelligence, learn the iron-smelting techniques of humans? Even the swamp lizardmen knew nothing about iron-smelting techniques. "I told you, I'm a smart goblin. There's nothing impossible for me." Bai Ling lowered her head slightly, not daring to meet the master's gaze. With her head down, Bai Ling's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The presence of the big goblin beside her was a disaster for all intelligent races in the goblin forest. Although Bai Ling kept her head down, Li Meng still sensed the killing intent emanating from her. Looking down at Bai Ling beside him, Li Meng grinned wickedly. "You can try, but if you fail, I'll make you watch as all your kin are eaten alive." Upon hearing this, Bai Ling, with her big belly, trembled. Her legs went weak, and she almost stumbled to the ground. Li Meng stepped to the left to support Bai Ling. "Master," Bai Ling wouldn't dare. Li Meng grinned without saying more. The two, each harboring their own thoughts, walked together in the tribe. In the following days, Li Meng didn't rush to leave. The next morning, he went back into the carpentry workshop. Having the triple-bow ballista wasn't enough. They also needed a means of transportation. Not only did the ballista need a transport tool, but the tribe's freight transport also required a means of transport. In ancient times, there was only one best means of transport, and that was a wheeled carriage. Although there were no horses in the tribe, they did have wild boars. The structure of a carriage is relatively simple, but the wheels are the most challenging part. While carriages aren't ideal for use in the forest, they're not entirely unusable either, as the forest isn't completely impenetrable. Many areas are relatively flat, allowing carriages to pass through. As the tribe's territory expands, building a road for quick travel becomes necessary. 5 days later, at the carpentry workshop, making wheels is much harder than forging iron. Looking at the rough axle in his hand, Li Meng felt powerless. To make wheels, you need some specialized tools. Relying on a hammer and a wood carving knife is time-consuming, and the results are crude. Forget it. I'll study it properly when I get back. Missing the airship because of researching carriage wheels would be a real loss. Getting up, Li Ming hurriedly walked out. In the afternoon, the tribe was bustling. A large group of goblins rushed into the carpentry workshop, panting as they carried out 3 ballistae. Each ballista required more than 20 goblins to transport. Over 70 goblins were moving 3 ballistae. More than 30 goblins were carrying bolts. Over 20 goblins were carrying spider silk ropes. A team of over 100 goblins marched grandly southward. What is that? The commotion outside caught Bai Ling's attention. Bai Ling pushed open the door of the throne cave and stepped out. As soon as she walked out, she saw the grand goblin procession heading away in the distance. The items the goblins were carrying piqued Bai Ling's curiosity. She didn't know what those wooden things were, but they looked heavy, requiring more than 20 goblins to carry them together. Binbin was also in the team. The master was sitting on its shoulder. Seemingly noticing Bai Ling's gaze, Li Ming, sitting on Binbin's shoulder, turned and waved at her. Facing the master's gaze, Bai Ling, standing at the entrance of the throne cave, lowered her head slightly. She turned and went back into the wooden house, closing the door behind her. Seeing this, Li Ming grinned. The team continued southward, leaving the tribe in grand fashion. Half an hour later, the river was bustling. It's slippery, the water's coming up. Steady, don't push over here. On the ice path connecting the 2 banks, goblins carefully carried the ballistae. The immense weight caused the ice path to sink slightly. River water surged onto the ice path. This made the goblins on the ice path wobble. The commotion lasted a long time. The goblin team on the ice path moved forward like turtles. Fortunately, the process was without incident. It took over half an hour for the goblin team to reach the southern bank. In the following time, the goblin team continued southward. They traveled by day, hunted in the first half of the night, and rested in the latter half. It took them more than half a month to reach the forest near the goblin lair. By noon, at the goblin lair, Boss, a goblin hurriedly crawled into the cave. It stumbled and slid to its knees at Gobu Tian's feet. Gobu Tian, who was gnawing on a big pig head under the stone platform, looked down at the tiny goblin at his feet and wiped the blood from his mouth. He grinned and reached out to grab the goblin. The goblin let out a terrified scream. The boss's boss is here. Gobu Tian's expression changed. He quickly withdrew his hand, stood up, and hurriedly walked out. Watching the boss leave, the goblin looked relieved. It had almost become the boss's lunch. Boss. Before it could run out of the cave, Gobu Tian's roar echoed from the cave entrance. Gobu Tian scurried out of the darkness at the cave entrance. As soon as he rushed out, he stopped. Seeing the goblins panting as they emerged from the forest, Gobu Tian was full of questions. Were those things the goblins were carrying on their shoulders? Ogre. At that moment, a massive figure emerged from the forest. Though it was clad in iron armor, Gobu Tian recognized Binbin at first glance. Gobu Tian let out a scream of terror. That was an ogre, the most terrifying creature in the goblin forest. Is that the boss? On the ogre's shoulder, Gobu Tian saw a familiar figure. It was the boss, the one who had killed Gobu Ba not long ago. The boss was sitting on the ogre's shoulder. Seeing this, Gobu Tian was filled with fervor. The boss was truly amazing, having tamed an ogre. Gobu Tian quickly ran over. Boss, what are you doing? Standing in front of Binbin, Gobu Tian asked obsequiously. His large face was almost scrunched up. Li Ming leaped down from Binbin's shoulder. Gobu Tian, from now on, have some goblins spread around the goblin lair, keeping an eye on the sky. Report to me immediately if there's any movement. I'll be staying here in the coming days. Though he didn't know what the boss was planning, Gobu Tian didn't ask further. He quickly turned and scurried back to the cave. And so, Li Ming began to wait for a chance, anticipating the appearance of the airship. To expand the observable range, he could only increase manpower as much as possible. Hundreds of goblins, under Li Ming's orders, spread throughout the forest around the goblin lair. They climbed trees and mountains, watching the surrounding airspace. Time passed quietly as Li Meng waited day by day. One afternoon, in the forest northwest of the Goblin Lair. The mountain where the Goblin Lair was located was a solitary peak, surrounded by undulating forested land. Only more than 10 kilometers away could the rolling mountains be seen. In the dim forest, several goblins were perched on treetops, watching the sky. What are we supposed to be watching for, birds? I don't know, just watch. Yeah. Staying here is much more comfortable than hunting. I want to go to the peak. You can see further from there. You idiot, it's cold on the peak at night. Nowhere near as comfortable as here. What do you know if I spot something first? The boss might reward me with mating rights. You're just trash. Talk about mating rights when you become a big goblin. Yeah, the offspring of little trash is still little trash, huh? The goblins on the surrounding treetops burst into laughter. The laughter filled the dim forest with a cheerful atmosphere. When I evolve into a big goblin, you'll all have to lick my boots. You? If you can evolve into a big goblin, I'll lick. Another round of laughter erupted on the treetops. Look, what's that? At that moment, a goblin on the outskirts suddenly shouted. Perched on the treetop, it pointed towards the northwest. In that direction, a ship soared over a towering mountain. It almost skimmed the peak as it flew past. The ship wasn't large, about 30 meters long. The two-masted sails on the deck were particularly striking. Quick, go tell the boss. The goblins who witnessed this scene were filled with wild joy and excitement. I'll go. You all stay here and watch, I'll go. The goblins on the treetops scrambled to slide down to the ground. Goblin, do you dare to compete with me? In the dim forest, several goblins were running with all their might. One goblin leaped forward, tackling the goblin in front of it. With a foot on the back of the fallen goblin, it sprinted ahead. Goblin, I'll eat you. The goblin on the ground roared in anger. The running goblin turned its head and made a face. Who eats who is still uncertain. Stop right there. The goblins in the forest rushed towards the goblin nest. Boss, the fastest goblin, Goblin Quick, was the first to rush into the cave. It slid to its knees, bowing before the stone platform. At this moment, Li Meng was eating a wild boar's heart on the stone. What's the matter? Why are you in such a panic? Goblin Quick patted its chest, panting heavily. Boss, something is flying towards us from the sky, and it's not a bird. Upon hearing this, Li Meng's eyes lit up. He casually tossed aside the heart in his hand and leaped off the stone platform. Bin, let's go. Li Meng's figure flashed as he rushed out of the cave. He dashed out of the cave without stopping, heading straight into the forest. Moments later, Li Meng's figure appeared on the treetop of a large tree deep in the forest. Standing on the treetop, Li Meng gazed into the distant sky. In that direction, an airship was flying towards them. So, this is an airship? Truly peculiar. No wings, no visible propulsion system. Nor did it have the airbags that a blimp would require. Though the airship wasn't very large, the fact that it could fly was a miracle. Li Meng put his fingers in his mouth and blew a whistle. Whistle! The loud whistle echoed between heaven and earth. It's the boss's signal. The goblins at the cave entrance heard the whistle. They scrambled back into the cave. In no time, over 100 goblins, panting heavily, carried a 3-bow ballista out of the cave. A dense mass of goblins carried the 3-bow ballista into the forest. The deployment positions for the 3-bow ballista had long been rehearsed. There were 24 deployment positions in the forest surrounding the goblin nest. Each deployment position had a small clearing among the trees. The goblin team carrying the 3-bow ballista split into 3 groups. They headed to their respective deployment positions. In the forest, 3 3-bow ballistae were placed in a triangular formation. Each ballista was 100 meters apart from the others. Faster, turn it faster. Make sure the spider's silk rope is tied tightly. Wrap it several times. Under the big goblin's orders, the goblins at the 3 deployment positions began preparing for launch. The goblins responsible for turning the winch started turning it. The goblins in charge of the harpoon bolts tied the other end of the spider's silk rope to the sturdiest tree. Some goblins even climbed up nearby treetops to observe the airship. For a moment, the forest was bustling with noise. The goblins' wah-wah cries echoed through the forest. Great, it's flying this way. Seeing the airship approaching, Li Meng grinned. The airship was about 700 meters high and still descending. This height was already within the range of the three-bow ballista. Meanwhile, in the nearby sky, an airship was flying. The airship wasn't fast, moving with the wind. Looking down at the deck, some soldiers in blue armor could be seen. There weren't many, only 13. They leaned over the ship's railing, observing the forest below. Any signs of the barbarian tribe? An officer in more exquisite armor paced the deck. He wore a helmet with a red plume. The other soldiers' helmets were bare on top. The forest is very quiet. No signs of anything. Captain, we should be close to our destination by now. A soldier stood up, rubbing his sore neck. The officer stopped behind him and kicked him in the rear. Don't slack off, we're still far from the reconnaissance boundary, at least 30 kilometers. Captain, could the recent rumors be true? Impossible. The Goblin Forest is home to many barbarians. They're not easy to deal with. It should have been done long ago. Such beautiful mountains and rivers occupied by barbarians is a real shame. The soldiers on the ship discussed the topic animatedly. The officer didn't stop them, as his men needed a topic to pass the time. Captain, possible goblin nest sighted ahead. At that moment, a soldier at the bow shouted a report. This caught the attention of the other soldiers. They rushed to the bow to observe the forest ahead. There's beast bones at the entrance. It should be a goblin nest. The forest outside is too quiet. It might be an abandoned nest. Note it down first. Let the adventurers handle it. Scribe, record this location. On the deck, there were not only soldiers and the officer. There were also 2 scribes in blue and white robes and a low-ranking priest from the temple. The scribe held a piece of parchment. It shimmered with magical light. The low-ranking priest was on the aft deck. He was controlling a crystal that emitted a blue magical glow and functioned as a ship's wheel. Meanwhile, in the forest ahead of the airship, Boss, the creature in the sky is getting closer. In the woods, the goblins on the treetops constantly reported the airship's position. At the deployment position, Li Meng controlled the 3-bow ballista, aiming at the sky. Once the airship appeared in sight, he would pull the trigger. Come on, my airship. Looking at the azure sky, Li Meng grinned. If the hunt was successful, perhaps he could unlock airship technology. Though the possibility was slim, it was worth a try. This was a world with magic, and the airship's ability to fly was surely related to magic. Lacking magical knowledge, Li Meng wasn't confident he could replicate an airship just by taking one down. But regardless, it was worth a shot. Time ticked away, and Li Meng waited patiently. Moments later, an airship slowly appeared above the forest at the deployment position. I see you. Li Meng's eyes lit up, and he grinned menacingly. He put his fingers in his mouth and blew a whistle. Shh! A sharp, clear whistle echoed through the depths of the forest. Whoosh! Almost simultaneously, a piercing sound cut through the air in the forest. 3 harpoon bolts, trailing long tails, shot out from the forest, soaring into the sky. In less than 500 meters, they reached their target. One harpoon bolt missed. It grazed the bow of the airship, shooting higher into the sky. The other 2 harpoon bolts successfully struck the ship's hull. Boom! With a loud crash, wood splinters flew everywhere. The 2-meter-long harpoon bolt pierced through the ship's body, bursting out from the deck. Ah! A scream echoed as wood splinters flew. An unfortunate soul on the deck was struck by the harpoon bolt that burst through. The immense impact force drove the harpoon bolt through the soldier's body. The soldier's body was flung over 10 meters into the air before crashing heavily onto the deck. The impact caused the airship in the sky to shake violently. What happened? What's going on? The sudden impact on the airship threw the soldiers on the deck into chaos. We're under attack. The harpoon bolt that grazed the bow pierced the sail. As it fell, it tangled with the sail. The spider silk rope instantly went taut. The pull from below caused the airship to jolt violently. Ah! Another scream rang out. This time, the scream lasted for quite a while. A soldier fell off the deck. The chilling scream quickly faded into the distance. "Captain, we're under attack." A soldier lying on the deck saw the harpoon bolt wedged tightly into the deck. The soldier impaled by the harpoon bolt was in a horrific state. Under the immense pull, blood flowed across the deck. Since the abdomen was pierced, the soldier didn't die immediately. He continued to struggle, pleading for help from his comrades. His internal organs were compressed, causing blood to gush from his mouth. "Lower the sails, stop moving quickly." The officer was the first to react. He rushed forward, throwing his long sword. The sword spun through the air, slicing through the spider silk rope. Once the rope was cut, the bow's downward tilt corrected itself. Hearing the creaking of the ship's body, the soldiers on the deck turned pale. If this continued, the airship would surely disintegrate. The soldiers struggled to their feet and rushed towards the mast. Meanwhile, in the forest below, two ropes extended from the forest, connecting to the airship in the sky. It was like flying a kite. The 2-finger-thick spider silk ropes strained with a crackling sound. At that moment, the airship's sails suddenly lowered. The airship, having lost its propulsion, floated motionlessly in the sky. As the airship stabilized, the soldiers on the deck hurried to the ship's edge. They scanned the forest below for enemies. It didn't take long for them to spot the goblins in the forest. "Captain, it's goblins. Goblins attacked us." "What goblins?" The officer was incredulous. He quickly leaned over the ship's edge to observe the forest below. Sure enough, he spotted the goblins. In the forest, 3 small clearings had been opened. In these clearings, some goblins were operating some kind of weapon. Is that a siege crossbow? The massive object in the forest left the officer in disbelief. Siege crossbows were military siege equipment. The entire kingdom had only a dozen or so on the capital's walls. How could goblins possess such military-grade siege weapons? "Quick, cut the ropes." 3 soldiers hurried to their impaled comrade. He was already dead, having bled out. The entire deck was almost stained red with blood. "Priest, are you all right?" The officer shouted towards the rear deck. "Not dead yet, but the ship won't hold much longer. Hurry." At this moment, a soldier who had rushed into the cabin found the harpoon bolt. He also saw the spider silk rope connected to the bolt. He swung his sword, attempting to cut the spider silk rope. Bang! But just then, wood splinters flew from underfoot. With a thunderous crash, a bolt pierced through the ship's body. The soldier was lucky. The bolt barely grazed past his nose. But he was also unlucky. The ship's body suddenly disintegrated beneath him, and he fell. The intense feeling of weightlessness caused him to scream in terror. The scream quickly faded into the distance. Soon, it vanished without a trace, never to be heard again. The bolt that struck the airship pierced through the ship's bottom. The immense impact sent the soldiers on the deck tumbling. Damn it! What the hell is going on? Even for a siege crossbow, this power was too great. The airship was at least 500 meters away. The power was still so immense at such a distance. The last shot let it fall. In the forest, Li Meng, operating the massive 3-bow ballista, grinned at the sky. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger. With a whoosh, the sound of the bolt cutting through the air shot skyward. The massive bolt turned into a black streak, soaring into the sky. In less than 500 meters, it reached its target. Boom! This shot directly hit the airship's keel. With a thunderous crash, wood splinters flew everywhere. The airship in the sky suddenly disintegrated, splitting in two. The broken bow and stern plummeted towards the ground. If you listened closely, you could hear the terrified screams. If you looked closely, you could see figures falling with the wreckage. Is that a human? In the forest, Li Meng gazed at the sky, admiring the horrific scene. It's falling, it's falling. The airship's descent sparked cheers among the goblins in the forest. Goblins on the treetops danced and shouted excitedly. After falling for over 10 seconds, the airship wreckage crashed into the depths of the forest. Let's go check it out. In a flash, Li Meng dashed towards the forest depths. Benben took large strides, chasing after the boss. The goblins in the forest also swarmed towards the airship's crash site. About 700 meters to the northwest, Li Ming found the airship wreckage. The wreckage of the bow and stern was over 100 meters apart. It's humans, after all. In the dim forest, Li Ming kicked over a corpse lying on the ground. As the body turned, a blond, blue-eyed man came into Li Ming's view. He looked somewhat like a European from Earth, but only somewhat. The hair and eyes were similar, but the face was more of a mixed east-west look. The skin was also pale, with a scruffy beard. It's humans, it's humans. Figures flickered in the surrounding forest. One by one, goblins rushed out from the forest depths. Upon seeing the bodies on the ground, they showed greedy expressions. But with the boss present, they only dared to watch from the side. Move all the bodies over here and put them together. At the leader's command, the goblins in the surrounding forest hurriedly gathered around. Hundreds of goblins searched the nearby forest for human corpses. In no time, more than a dozen human bodies were laid out in front of Li Ming. Looking at the line of human corpses before him, Li Ming showed a curious expression. They were all humans, but their hair colors varied. There were blondes, as well as those with black and brown hair. Their facial features were similar, indicating they were of the same race. Due to their deaths, Li Ming couldn't see their information. Boss, there's a human still alive." At this moment, a goblin rushed over. Hearing this, Li Ming's eyes lit up. "Where? Lead the way. This way, this way." The goblin, with a fawning expression, led the way ahead. Li Ming followed the goblin northward. After running about 100 meters, they found a person under a large tree. A person dressed in a white robe. He was still alive, but barely hanging on. Around him, a dozen goblins were circling. Their eyes were filled with greed as they sniffed the bloody scent emanating from him. They wanted to approach, but didn't dare, their drool almost dripping out. "The boss is here! The boss is here!" With a loud shout, the goblins surrounding the humans scattered like birds and beasts. They ran far away, looking at Li Ming with fear. Crystal Apostle. Level 31. Strength 17. Defense 14. Agility 15. Crystal Magic Power 267. Crystal Magic. Non-absorbable. Crystal Magic. Non-absorbable. Crystal Magic. Non-absorbable. Seeing his information, Li Ming showed a strange expression. Weird. Why are all his skills marked with question marks? Clearly a human. Why does the system refer to him as a Crystal Apostle? Boss. At this moment, a goblin came running over, holding a crystal emitting a blue glow. The crystal was quite large, just slightly smaller than the goblin's head. This was found among the wreckage. It's very pretty. Li Ming took the crystal from a goblin's hands. Crystal Magic Power. The information about the crystal made Li Ming's eyes flash with surprise. The magic power contained in this crystal was astonishingly high, reaching a value of 110,000. Could it be that the airship flies by relying on the magic power of the crystal? Looking down at the crystal in his hand, Li Ming murmured to himself, "If that's the case, then the crystal is truly a valuable item." However, for some reason, Li Ming felt an inexplicable chill while holding the crystal. Why does it feel like an ominous object? Li Ming raised the crystal high, observing it carefully, murmuring softly. It was beautiful, extremely beautiful. The blue magical glow formed lovely particles of light. On Earth, this thing would be worth a fortune. "Goblin, take your filthy hands off the crystal. You're not worthy." At some point, the unconscious human had woken up. He glared angrily, his eyes filled with nothing but disdain. Li Ming looked down at him and grinned menacingly. "Eat him!" The surrounding goblins showed expressions of wild joy. They rushed forward, shouting, and pounced on the human. 1, 2, 3. More than a dozen goblins pounced on the human. Using their hands and sharp teeth, they tore at the warm flesh. The human didn't even have the strength to scream. He could only watch helplessly as he was disemboweled and eaten alive. Warm blood was flung onto Li Ming's face by the goblin's claws. Li Ming stuck out his tongue to lick it, grinning. Human flesh and blood were indeed delicious. Li Ming stepped forward and pulled a blood-stained cloth from the feasting goblins. Then he wrapped the crystal in a cloth. Humans truly lived up to their name. This fabric, who knows what it's made of? Smooth, soft, it felt very comfortable to the touch. What a pity! Looking at the tattered cloth in his hand, Li Meng shook his head. That human had many skills, but unfortunately, they couldn't be absorbed. In the following time, Li Meng explored the wreckage of the airship. He searched and searched, but couldn't find any magical devices. The wreckage of the airship was just ordinary wood, nothing special about it. Strange, there must be something special about it. Looking at the airship wreckage before him, Li Meng was puzzled. After searching for hours, he found nothing. If he hadn't seen the airship flying in the sky with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that this pile of wood could fly. These wrecks were just ordinary wooden boats, nothing special about them. Could it be? His eyes lit up, and Li Meng rushed into the wreckage. He rummaged through the debris, with chips flying everywhere. A few minutes later, Li Meng emerged holding a long, thick, curved piece of wood. Just as I thought. Looking at the long, curved wood in his hand, Li Meng grinned. This piece of curved wood was a section of a broken keel. The keel was made from some kind of purple wood. It had some very peculiar patterns carved on it, looking quite mysterious. Forget it, it's too complicated. Li Meng regretfully tossed the keel aside. Clearly, the keel was the magical device, but the patterns on it were far too complex. Just one look, and Li Meng knew it was impossible to replicate. Thinking about such brain-draining matters made Li Meng's head hurt. The commotion in the forest lasted for a long time. It wasn't until the sun set that the forest quieted down. Goblin, tomorrow take some goblins with me back to the tribe. That night, the cave was pitch black. Goblin quickly turned over and knelt on the ground below the stone platform. Boss, I'll go with you. Goblin knew the boss had established a new tribe elsewhere. He had also heard that there were many female lizard men in the tribe. From now on, you're the boss here. I'll tell you what to do and what not to do. Boss, I don't quite understand. You don't need to understand, just do as I say. Boss, I understand. I'll listen to you. Time passed bit by bit, and the night grew deeper. The quiet cave was soon filled with the snores of goblins. Early the next morning, just as dawn broke, the goblin cave was bustling. A large group of goblins rushed out of the cave, flooding into the northern forest. The three-bow ballistae were not taken by Li Meng. Instead, they were left in the goblin cave. There were many powerful magical beasts in the goblin forest. The three-bow ballistae had great lethality against magical beasts below the 5th tier. If they encountered a powerful magical beast, they could use the three-bow ballistae to shoot it down. This way, they wouldn't have to avoid powerful magical beasts like before. The goblin nest was a good place, and Li Meng wouldn't give it up. In the future, as the tribe's hunting area expanded, the goblins couldn't gather together. They had to spread out and establish one goblin tribe after another. Each tribe would be responsible for a hunting area. They would develop independently and gather when needed. This way, the hunting party wouldn't waste too much time traveling back and forth. By spreading out and establishing tribes, the demand for food would also be greatly reduced. The next day, it was already noon. In the dim forest, footsteps rumbled as figures moved. Hundreds of goblins spread throughout the forest, advancing in groups. Among the many green-skinned figures, there was one that was even larger. Bin, walking through the forest, looked like a moving metal mountain. Li Meng, sitting on Bin's shoulder, yawned. System starts simulated life. The airship was shot down, indicating that the future had already changed. Simulated life begins. You walk through the dim forest with your goblin underlings. You return to the tribe and patiently wait for the black robe to appear. One day, the black robe appears. You obtain a sacrificial disc from the black robe that can summon the barbarian god. Signs of the pigman tribe's activity are discovered in the eastern forest. You choose to ignore them. The rotation period is approaching. Please choose from the following options. 1. Allow the lizard men of the northern swamp to rebel. 2. Gather all the goblins to intimidate the lizard men of the northern swamp. 3. March to the northern swamp. Annihilate the black scale and gray scale tribes and kill all male lizard men. 4. Summon the barbarian god. A hint of helplessness flashed in Li Meng's eyes as he sat on Benben's shoulder. The future information predicted by the simulated life was too brief. Lacking details, it was easy to miss side quests that could affect the future. He had to proceed cautiously, changing the future based on known information. What should I choose? Li Meng focused on the 4 options. Options 1, 3, and 4 were not viable. Knowing in advance that the lizardmen would rebel, he couldn't just ignore it. If left unchecked, the combined male lizardmen from the 2 tribes numbered over 1,000. This was a force that couldn't be ignored. The 3rd option went against Li Meng's original intention of subduing the lizardmen of the northern swamp. The 4th option was even less feasible. He'd have to be out of his mind to choose the 4th option. Choose option 2. You gathered all the goblins, and their massive numbers intimidated the lizardmen. You and Bai Ling headed to the Iron Cave. The rotation period arrived, and Bai Ling returned to the White Scale tribe. The Black Mountain Lizardmen tribe's army attacked, retreating without a fight, and Bai Ling was captured. One day, an adventurer squad appeared in the forest near the goblin nest. Gobu Tian was killed by the adventurer squad, and the goblin nest was completely destroyed. Gobu Di and Gobu sure led the goblin army to pursue the Black Mountain Lizardmen tribe's army. You headed to the southern shore to confront the adventurer squad alone. You encountered the adventurer squad in the forest where the airship wreckage was. You achieved victory, killing all the men and capturing 2 female humans. From the captives, you learned some information about the human principality of Illicis. You caught up with the goblin army and continued to pursue the Black Mountain tribe's army. In a certain forest, you led the goblin boar cavalry and caught up with the Black Mountain tribe's army. You defeated the Black Mountain tribe's army and killed them all. The Black Mountain tribe, hearing of their army's complete annihilation, summoned the barbarian god Aqua out of fear. The Black Mountain swamp was polluted by the barbarian god, becoming the Great Wasteland, and all life was refined into wasteland slaves. You chose to withdraw the army and led the goblin army back to the tribe. Due to the need for food, you taught the lizardmen the knowledge of fish farming. Your tribe thrived. One day, a man in full armor appeared in the forest near the goblin nest. One day, he found the goblin tribe. On that day, you used a human wave tactic to kill the man, with heavy casualties to the tribe. One day, a woman appeared in the forest near the goblin nest. One day, she found the goblin tribe. On that day, the tribe turned into a sea of fire. You died, and the tribe was completely destroyed. As a transmigrator, no matter how cautious you are, you cannot change the fact that you are toyed with by the goddess of fate, and all your efforts ultimately turned to nothing. Your life was valuable, setting the stage for the goblin forest to be transformed into a wasteland. Simulated life ends. Score 60. Please choose from the following rewards. Consume 10 score levels +1. Consume 1 score attribute +1. Consume 10 score charisma +1. Consume 10 score berserk skill level +1. Consume 20 score steel skin skill level +1. Consume 10 score heart speech skill level +1. Is this a case of the big boss coming after the small fry? The man and woman who appeared at the end were clearly strong among humans. Otherwise, that man wouldn't have required him to use a human wave tactic to kill him. This indicated that the man was far stronger than him. And that woman, she managed to completely destroy the tribe. Such powerful combat strength was likely at the pinnacle among humans. Could it be that the adventurer squad had relatives of that man and woman? Li Meng considered this possibility. The possibility was very high, extremely high. Otherwise, there was no explanation for why that man and woman appeared. It seems that shooting down the airship triggered a chain reaction. Li Meng frowned, his expression thoughtful. If he hadn't shot down the airship, would that adventurer squad have appeared? Without that adventurer squad, the man and woman wouldn't have been drawn in. How can I avoid the worst outcome? Li Meng pondered deeply while sitting on Benben's shoulder. The system gave him too few options. Li Meng suspected that the frequency of options in the simulated life was related to his luck value. If options appeared more frequently, he could have more future choices. He wouldn't be forced to follow a single future path to the end. However, this time he was lucky to have 3 skill option rewards. Choose to enhance the Steel Skin skill level. Consume 60 score, Steel Skin skill level plus 3. Here it comes. The familiar intense pain swept through his body. Li Meng's body crackled as he sat on Binbin's shoulder. His shin bones twisted out of shape as if crushed by some force. His entire face contorted into a mass and was forcibly pulled apart. After a while, Li Meng's body returned to normal. Binbin curiously turned to look at his boss on his shoulder. By the time Binbin looked over, Li Meng's physical changes had ended. Li Meng looked down at his hands and grinned. He had grown stronger again. Li Meng could feel the immense power hidden within his body. At this moment, Li Meng finally understood why he was so arrogant in front of the black robe. With a thought, Li Meng opened the character panel. Name, Goblin. Race, Goblin. Level, 15. Strength, 1675. Defense, 1659. Agility, 591. Magic, 86. Charisma, 0. Luck, 11. Devour. Chance to acquire skills from devoured magical beast flesh. Steel Skin, LV 5. Strength plus 1,500. Defense plus 1,500. Agility plus 500. Windblade, LV 1. Body Regeneration, LV 5. Heart Speech, LV 1. Ice Element Control, LV 1. Berserk, LV 1. Limb Enhancement, LV 1. Strength plus 50, Agility plus 50. The Steel Skin skills attribute boost was truly astonishing. As the stats on his panel became increasingly exaggerated, Li Meng realized one thing. Goblins were indeed very weak. Even the Goblin King's stats might only be 200 or 300. I wonder how high the stats of those 2 people are. Despite having such high stats, he was still no match for that man. This indicated that the man's strength far surpassed his own. In the following days, Li Meng led his goblin underlings, traveling intermittently. They hunted while heading north. It was only one afternoon, half a month later, that they arrived at the tribe. Goblin, stay in the tribe for a month, then return. When your offspring reach adulthood, send someone to fetch them. In front of the throne cave, Li Meng made arrangements for Goblin. Goblin nodded, curiously observing the tribe. It hadn't expected the boss's lair to be in the forest, nor had it expected the boss to build strange caves like the lizard man. Goblin, first take Goblin to choose a cave, then take it to the Iron Cave. Today, Goblin was guarding the tribe. Goblin quickly nodded. Then Goblin led Goblin and its goblin underlings away. Watching Goblin's departing figure, Li Meng sighed inwardly. The worst-case future had already appeared. Now, he had to find a way to change the future. Li Meng turned to look at Bai Ling at the door. A round trip had taken more than a month. Bai Ling's big belly had disappeared. Even at the door, Li Meng could smell a faint scent of milk. Looking at Bai Ling's curvaceous figure, Li Meng thought of his bloodline offspring. The first batch of goblin children had already reached adulthood. They were learning how to hunt with the hunting party. Counting them, the number of his bloodline offspring had exceeded 200. In less than a year, his bloodline offspring could exceed 500. If there were more female lizard men, the growth rate of his bloodline offspring would be even faster. This was the terrifying aspect of goblins. Even the reproduction speed of groundhogs couldn't compare to goblins. Only food could limit the number of goblins. Li Meng walked towards Bai Ling with a blank expression. He didn't have enough bloodline offspring yet. As his panel stats increased, the potential of his bloodline offspring would only grow higher. Only his bloodline offspring could improve the quality of the tribe's goblins. Whether he wanted to or not, he had to go all out to reproduce. As a goblin, in this world, he could only rely on goblins. Everything was just to survive. Seeing the terrifying goblin approaching, Bai Ling's heart trembled. She quickly lowered her head, wanting to speak but hesitating. They hadn't rested for months. She wanted to plead with the goblin in front of her to let them rest for a few months. But the pride of a high priestess wouldn't allow her to bow to a goblin. Li Meng strode up to Bai Ling. He wrapped an arm around her waist and led her into the wooden house. Soon, there were sounds coming from the wooden house. Listening to the sounds from the throne cave, the goblins outside were full of envy. The noises in the wooden house continued for a long time. It wasn't until the afternoon of the third day that the tightly shut door opened again. Li Meng walked out, looking refreshed. Inside the throne cave, all the beds were pushed together. The beds were strewn with graceful figures, their beast skirts long discarded. All the female lizard men looked utterly exhausted. High Priestess, are you okay? Queen Nana weakly sat up. She looked worriedly at the High Priestess lying on the bed not far away. Among all of them, the High Priestess had been tormented the most by the Master. Bai Ling, lying on the bed, moved slightly. She sat up, taking a deep breath. I'm fine, I'm perfectly fine. At this time, the other female lizard men gradually recovered. They sat up one after another, searching for their bee-skin skirts. Outside the door, Li Meng heard the whispers from inside the room. He grinned, leisurely walking towards the direction of the carpentry workshop. These female lizard men might despise him from the bottom of their hearts, but when they were lost in the depths of desire, their voices were equally wild. Boss, what brings you here? Seeing the boss arrive, Goblin quickly went up to greet him. In the carpentry workshop, a group of goblins was busy working. In one corner, there was a pile of crossbows without strings. In another corner, there was an unfinished three-bow ballista. How's it going? Can you make the three-bow ballista? Goblin shrank his neck, giving an awkward smile. He glanced at the half-finished three-bow ballista in the corner. For goblins, the steps to make a three-bow ballista were still too complex. All right, just keep learning from me. Seeing the boss wasn't angry, Goblin quickly nodded. In the following days, Li Meng continued teaching Goblin how to make the three-bow ballista. Before they knew it, half a month had passed. In the morning, at the carpentry workshop, Goblin, when I return, I'll inspect the three-bow ballista. If it's not up to standard, you know the consequences. At the door, Goblin nodded vigorously. Without saying much, Li Meng turned and left. Watching the boss's departing figure, Goblin patted his face. This time, he couldn't forget again. Goblin turned to look at the group of goblin underlings inside. Did you all get a good look? Faced with the boss's gaze, the goblins in the carpentry workshop exchanged glances. One goblin hesitantly nodded. Seeing this, the other goblins quickly nodded too. Whether he remembered or not didn't matter, as long as the other goblins did. Very good, then let's get started. Goblin smiled excitedly. Whether he remembered or not didn't matter, as long as his underlings did. In the tribe, Li Meng walked leisurely with Benbin. Benbin, wait for me in the tribe. I'll be back soon. As if remembering something, Li Meng dashed off towards the edge of the tribe. Watching the boss hurriedly run towards the depths of the forest, Benbin shook his head. It didn't follow, but instead headed towards the throne cave. After leaving the tribe, Li Meng followed the river eastward. Occasionally, he climbed to the treetops to observe the surrounding terrain. Sometimes, he climbed high to gaze at the surrounding mountains and land. The next day, about 10 kilometers north of the river, atop a mountain, Li Meng climbed a tree, gazing into the distance from the treetop. His legs clamped tightly around a branch, holding a wooden board in one hand. In the other hand, he held a piece of charcoal. From time to time, he sketched on the wooden board with the charcoal. Looking at the board, a map could be vaguely seen. Let's call it the Goblin River from now on. From a high vantage point, the river in the forest wound its way forward, stretching all the way to the horizon. Li Meng, perched on a treetop, packed up his wooden board and swiftly slid down the tree. As soon as he landed, his figure flickered and he dashed down the mountain. In the following days, Li Meng focused on one task, mapping both banks of the Goblin River. Another new day began in the forest on the southern shore of the Goblin River. Deep in the dim forest, Li Meng walked leisurely, holding a wooden map and making adjustments with charcoal. After several days of following the river upstream, Li Meng had gained a lot, memorizing the topography of the Goblin River's banks. This is, a scent I've never smelled before. Li Meng suddenly halted in his tracks, raising his head slightly and twitching his nose, sniffing the unique scent in the air with his keen sense of smell. Could it be a high-level magical beast? He wondered, looking towards the depths of the forest. The tribe was located at the northern edge of the Goblin forest, and encountering a high-level magical beast was not an easy feat. In areas inhabited by barbarians, high-level magical beasts were also rarely seen, as barbarians would consciously drive them away or hunt them. Despite their strength, the lack of intelligence was the greatest weakness of magical beasts, making even the strongest of them targets for hunting. Let's go take a look. Driven by curiosity, Li Meng headed towards the source of the scent. After walking about 300 meters, a sunlit clearing appeared in the forest ahead. Seeing this, Li Meng quickly hid behind a large tree, cautiously peeking out to observe. What he saw left him stunned. Outside was a forest lake, not very large, about 2,000 square meters. The water was shallow and crystal clear, revealing some round, semi-transparent little creatures. Water slime. Level 1. Strength 1. Defense 1. Agility 1. Magic 3,314. Elemental Affinity. LV3. The bizarre panel attributes left Li Meng, hidden behind the tree, in disbelief. All attributes were 1. Even the level was 1, yet the magic value was as high as 3,314. Such a high magic attribute value, without any attack magic skills, was too strange. Didn't expect it to be water slimes. Hiding behind the tree, Li Meng looked greedily at the water slimes in the lake. The skill of the water slimes was exactly what he needed. With the elemental affinity skill, the problem of insufficient magic could be perfectly solved. Li Meng glanced at the ground, bent down, and picked up a stone about half the size of his fist, weighing it in his hand. He looked towards the lake, searching for a target. You're the one. Li Meng locked onto the nearest water slime, assuming a throwing stance from behind the tree. With a powerful throw of his right hand, the stone flew out. Smack! The stone crossed over 20 meters and struck a water slime, bursting it like a balloon with a pop, its remnants quickly dissolving into the water. Li Meng was momentarily stunned by the sight. Meanwhile, the death of their companion startled the water slimes, causing them all to dissolve into water and disappear without a trace. Seeing the water slimes vanish, Li Meng, hidden behind the tree, was dumbfounded. How am I supposed to catch them now? Li Meng walked out from behind the tree, speechless, looking at the calm lake, feeling at a loss. I don't believe you won't come out. After a while, Li Meng turned away from the lakeshore and hid back in the forest. Time passed slowly, hour after hour. 3 hours later, in the forest by the lakeshore. Why is there still no movement? Li Meng, hiding behind a tree, peeked at the lakeshore. It had been so long, yet the lake remained still. Could it be they won't come out? Helpless, Li Meng continued to wait. Another hour passed. Another day passed. 3 days later, at noon, in the forest by the lakeshore. Damn it, come out already! Li Meng, holding a huge rock, angrily walked out of the forest. The boulder was thrown with a splash, landing in the water. Come out, come out! Frustrated, Li Meng picked up stones from the lakeshore and threw them into the lake, causing water to splash everywhere. The sound of splashing water echoed through the area. Not coming out, huh? Let's see how long you can hide. 3 days of waiting had exhausted Li Meng's patience. He quickly approached a large boulder on the lakeshore, pulling it out of the ground with both hands. I'll crush you. The several-ton boulder was hurled out, flying dozens of meters before crashing heavily into the water. With a boom, a massive column of water shot into the sky, causing the water's surface to ripple violently, forming small waves that slowly spread out. After venting his frustration, Li Meng lay on the lakeshore, panting heavily. You little cuties, you really know how to waste my time. Li Meng grumbled as he crawled to the water's edge, gulping down lake water. Ugh, what is this stuff? No taste at all. After a few sips, Li Meng spat out the lake water in disgust. Skill Devour successfully activated. Acquired skill Elemental Affinity. The sudden system prompt left Li Meng stunned. What the this works? Li Meng was shocked, feeling a mix of emotions. He had waited for 3 days, only to acquire the elemental affinity skill in such an unexpected way. Could the water in this lake be made of parts of the water slime's bodies? The water had no taste at all, clearly not ordinary water. If it wasn't water, then what was it? With a thought, Li Meng opened his character panel. Name, Goblin. Race, Goblin. Level, 15. Strength, 1675. Defense, 1659. Agility, 591. Magic, 1086. Charm, 0. Luck, 11. Devour. Chance to acquire skills by devouring the flesh of magical beasts. Steel Skin, LV5. Strength plus 1,500. Defense plus 1,500. Agility plus 500. Windblade, LV1. Body Regeneration, LV5. Heart Speech, LV1. Ice Element Control, LV1. Berserk, LV1. Limb Enhancement, LV1. Strength plus 50, Agility plus 50. Elemental Affinity, LV1. Magic plus 1,000. The magic value indeed increased, soaring by 1,000. Could the water in this lake be liquid formed by magic? Realizing this possibility, Li Meng hurried back to the water's edge and drank several large gulps of lake water. But it turned out Li Meng was overthinking it. The magic attribute value didn't change at all. Looks like I was overthinking. With an awkward smile, Li Meng stood up. I'll let you go this time since I'm in a good mood. Li Meng had initially thought about freezing the lake, but since he had already gotten what he wanted, there was no need to do so. With a pleased expression, Li Meng walked deeper into the forest. In the following days, Li Meng continued upstream. He trekked over mountains and through rivers, stopping and starting along the way. 5 days later, he reached the northern bank of the Goblin River. About 20 kilometers away from the Goblin River stood a large mountain. On the cliffside halfway up the mountain stood a green-skinned figure. That green-skinned figure was Li Meng. Standing high, he could see far, and the forest at the foot of the mountain was laid out before him. But the forest was not quiet. It was bustling with noise. The forest on both sides of a tributary of the Goblin River was being felled. In the forest, many pig-headed, human-bodied creatures could be seen. They wielded stone axes, panting as they chopped down trees. Their stature was much larger than that of goblins. Their average height was around 1.9 meters. They looked chubby, giving a sense of both fleshiness and sturdiness. They resembled humans more than pigs. Apart from their large noses and ears, their pig heads were more human-like. The pigmen tribe had migrated here some time ago. On both sides of the small river stood rows of new thatched huts. Those simple in structure and somewhat crude in appearance. They were adequate shelters from the wind and rain. In the tribe, some fires could be seen smoking. The presence of the fires indicated that the pigmen tribe knew how to use fire. Finally found you. Looking at the distant pigmen tribe settlement, Li Meng murmured to himself. Another purpose of his journey upstream was to find the pigmen tribe. After a month, he finally found them. The pigmen tribe was not small. The visible number alone was no less than 2,000. If Li Meng hadn't seen some undigested waste in the Goblin River, finding the pigmen tribe wouldn't have been easy. Glancing slightly to the south, Li Meng looked in that direction. The end of this tributary was the Goblin River. At the confluence, the Goblin River wound southward, deep into the Goblin Forest. The pigmen tribe's location was about 70 kilometers from a tribe. Not too close, but not too far either. Li Meng recorded the pigmen tribe's location on a wooden board with charcoal. Time to head back. Li Meng hadn't forgotten about the Black Robe matter. However, Black Robe shouldn't appear so soon. Although the simulated life predicted future information was quite brief. It didn't specify when Black Robe would appear, but some information could help predict the approximate time. Before long, the green-skinned figure by the cliff had disappeared. It had taken over a month to come, stopping and starting, sometimes on the southern shore, sometimes returning to the northern shore. But it only took Li Meng 5 days to return to the tribe. On the afternoon of the 5th day, Li Meng returned to the tribe. Boss, The return of the boss excited the goblins guarding the entrance to the throne cave. Two goblins looked at the approaching boss with fawning expressions. "Go find Gobu and have him send some clay over," Li Meng instructed the goblin underlings as he approached. One goblin quickly turned and ran in the direction of the iron cave. "Where's Benben?" Li Meng looked around but didn't see Benben. "Boss, Benben left half a month ago, and we don't know where he went. He hasn't returned yet." Benben left? This news surprised Li Meng, but he didn't pay much attention and walked inside. Benben was an ogre, and his armor allowed him to roam the goblin forest freely. Although Li Meng didn't know where Benben went, he believed Benben would return. Not here either. Entering the throne cave, Li Meng found that the female lizard men were not there. He knew where they had gone. They must have gone to the iron cave to deliver milk to the male lizard men. Li Meng didn't linger in the throne cave. Seeing no one inside, he turned and left. "I wonder how Gobu is doing." Walking through the tribe, Li Meng thought to himself. More than a month had passed, and he hoped Gobu wouldn't disappoint him. Before long, Li Meng saw the carpentry workshop. "The boss is here. The boss is here." Seeing the boss, the goblins at the door acted as if they'd seen a ghost. They turned and ran into the carpentry workshop, closing the door behind them. This scene gave Li Meng a bad feeling. At the door, Li Meng heard the sound of running inside the workshop. "Gobu, what are you up to?" Li Meng shouted, pushing the door open. The running inside the workshop came to an abrupt halt. All the goblins looked at the boss at the door with fear, especially Gobu, who was tinkering with a 3-bow ballista in the corner. "Not bad, very good." Seeing the 3-bow ballista in the corner, Li Meng's eyes lit up. He walked over to Gobu with a look of satisfaction, praising him generously as he walked. Gobu chuckled, fawning as he approached. "Boss, you came back so soon? It's been over a month, and you call that soon?" Li Meng glared at Gobu and approached the 3-bow ballista. Gobu shrank his neck, worriedly looking at the ballista. Looking at the 3-bow ballista in front of him, Li Meng nodded repeatedly. Although it didn't have the bowstring, it looked like something. But the craftsmanship was truly ugly, very crude. Both the bow and the ballista's frame were full of dents and bumps. "Not bad. Not a waste of my teaching you for so long." Li Meng was quite satisfied with what they had managed to create. Next, he would let Gobu and the others slowly refine their skills. Thinking of this, Li Meng reached out to adjust the slightly crooked bow. Crash! With that touch, the 3-bow ballista suddenly fell apart. With a clattering sound, its parts scattered all over the ground. Li Meng's outstretched right hand froze in midair, his gaze vacant. "A boss!" Gobu took 2 fearful steps back. He wanted to run, but his body wouldn't move. "Gobu, you idiot!" A thunderous roar echoed through the carpentry workshop. The massive roar sent a shock through the goblins in the tribe. They all looked in astonishment towards the carpentry workshop. In the nearby forest, a group of female lizard men was returning to the tribe. "High Priest, it sounds like that goblin's voice." Queen Nana shuddered, her expression uncertain. The master had been gone for over a month. They had just given birth not long ago, and now the master was back. Frequent pregnancies had left them physically and mentally exhausted. Bai Ling's heart sank, and she remained silent. A flicker of fear passed through the eyes of the other female lizard men. In the following days, Gobu used up all his luck. Li Meng's scolding and the goblins' cries echoed from the carpentry workshop from time to time.